Hi, I'm Maggie,
Hi, I'm Grace, and this is
a very bookish podcast.
Welcome back to episode 17 of a very bookish podcast. Today is our A Court of Silver Flames part 3. It is our last episode in our 3-part series episodes for A Court of Silver Flames. It's taken us a while to talk about this.
Yep, it has. But it's mostly because we just love to talk. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, we always say oh, we're gonna do an hour, and we always talk about it how we're like, oh, we're gonna just do an hour, and then we end up doing 2 hours.
It's literally become like anytime we say a certain time frame, just add an hour extra to that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I always think about that. I'm like, okay, we're only gonna do an hour. We said that for We Hunt the Flame, and then it just went to 2 hours, and I was just like, oh, okay. It was a lot.
Oh, it's fun though. It's fun because we get to talk about all the stuff that we want to talk about. And then like literally every time we finish recording, I'm like, dang, I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to say this. But then there's also like not enough time. I mean, people can talk about certain books forever. And that's why podcasts are so great.
Yeah, no. I just want to give a shout out to Grace today because she sent this is her birthday gift. It says Rowan Whitethorn's wife. It is the t-shirt I'm wearing because I don't have anything else to wear. So I wanted to give a shout out to Grace for making this amazing t-shirt for me for my birthday. I still have Grace's birthday gift. I'm getting it all together. I can't wait to show what it's not what you think. It's not what you think. Kate knows what I'm talking about. If Kate's listening, Kate knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm definitely going to be hounding Kate then to find out. Because I mean, I liked that what I put in your gift, in your birthday gift, but I felt like I could have done more too.
No. I'm excited to show you what I got you.
I'm kind of scared. For those of you listening who don't know, my birthday is in April. We're recording this in March. And Maggie has been talking about my birthday gift since November.
Mm-hmm.
Since November. So I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because it's just like, how have you been getting stuff together for my birthday that was in November? That's like a long time to be thinking about these things. So I'm like, that's a lot of planning. And so I'm kind of nervous at how big you're doing it, but I'm also trying to keep myself like relaxed. It's not going to be that bad. It's not
that bad. It's I like to curate things specifically for a person. So if that's why I give myself time to find gifts. And so if I see something that I'm like, oh my God, Grace would love this, that's what I get. And I'm like, okay, that's her birthday present. So that's why I'm good at giving gifts, is because I don't restrict myself to a certain time period to find something. I meander around life, and then I see something and I'm like, oh my gosh, Grace would love that.
So cute. I feel so loved. If you guys didn't know, my love language, although physical touch is number 1, gift giving is number 2. So if you ever give me something, I will love you forever.
Physical touch is 0 for me. I literally got 0 on physical touch.
Physical touch is like majority. I don't even remember what percentage it is, but it's like majority of it. And then it's gift giving, and then words of affirmation, and then words of affirmation and quality time are like hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is,
why are we even talking about this again?
I don't remember. But yeah, anyways, back to what we're gonna be talking about.
The book.
The book, yes. So this time, hopefully, we'll be a little more organized in how we phrase these talking points. We do want to hit like a lot of things that people have been saying. We've been asking you guys for information on what you guys want to hear, what things you guys liked about the book, what things you guys don't like about the book. So hopefully we'll get to talk about all those things. And I want you guys to remember, people are always going to have positive and negative reactions to any type of book. There's never going to be one book that everybody absolutely adores, wholeheartedly. And you just got to accept that as a reader. Books are subjective, and people got to understand that not everybody's going to have the same reactions. I don't know.
Because I definitely, I involuntarily put lip gloss on, I have to have it on my lips if I wear. I think you know, I don't know if you noticed that, but like during a podcast, I'll like every 2 minutes I'll apply lip gloss. But I'm using the ColourPop one today. I'm using ColourPop and Estee Lauder because I stole them. I stole the Estee Lauder from my mother. Um, but I think it's also very important because like some people love From Blood and Ash, and then other people couldn't get into it. They thought it was boring, and I'm like, it's very subjective to what you like. Some people love sci-fi, some people don't like reading sci-fi, and so I think it's just subjective. But there's also like things that you have to like, some things that are problematic that you do have to recognize. So we'll get into that conversation later. First, I think we should start off from where we ended last podcast. I don't remember where we ended. Do you?
We ended with the mask
Oh, yes.
and that whole scene, which reminds me I need to make sure to post the actual pictures on
I know, because we
I'm
both.
going to do it. I'm going to do it. I always say that I'm going to do it, and I never do. I'm doing it this time. I
It's
promise you guys.
it's funny because we both have like we both share the Gmail and the Instagram, but like I'll see you post something and I'm like, wait, I didn't post anything, and then I remember, oh, you are linked to it as well. Or like we'll get an email and you're like, oh, have you seen this? Or like a DM, and I'm like, I have not.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That tells you how much I'm on my phone. Good. So we stopped right after
we
the
stopped right
mask.
before the masks, or yeah,
Yeah.
after she brought everybody back up from the dead. Um,
And a little bit after finding out about all of the
oh, we talked about the spicy scene. We talked about them finally doing it.
yeah, and then we're talking about the blades and how they realized that they were that Nesta was the one that created the a new trove
Yeah.
with the three blades. So we have that. Um and yeah, let's get started, right?
So we know that they're not going to tell Nesta, which we're going to have a discussion later when it's revealed. So I think the next big thing that happens is the meeting with Eris and Tamlin in the spring court between Nesta and Eris, and we finally see this interaction between the two of them. And you know the meme that I'm talking about where it's all the guys surrounding Nesta and like Eris is already interested in her in
Oh
this.
yeah. His interest is definitely peaked, and like we see Cassian kind of getting that, like, jealousy a little bit,
And he
but
also
then also kind of like he kind of takes the back seat in this kind of conversation and lets Nesta kind of handle it. Um
and
and
we
that's
see
like the
Nesta.
whole reason why she goes.
Yeah, and we see Nesta defending Cassian too. When
Oh yeah.
when she sees how Eris treats Cassian, she's like, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm gonna put you in your place, son.
Yep.
I'm the only one who can do that." And like I think it's interesting how we see Cassian stepping back and allowing Nesta to be herself and to threaten the men. He's not the one who, especially when it comes to Tamlin, when she threatens Tamlin, when Tamlin finally like finds them, he's not the one who is like, oh, I'm gonna like do something to you. Nesta's the one who's like, don't try, don't even try, I will destroy you. And like her bringing her eyes, making her eyes glow is like so badass bitch
Of
move.
eye glowing. I like something about eyes glowing in any kind of like fantasy book. It just kind of like makes me think like, damn, I wish that was me.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I could do like that would be like even if that were like my only power, I'd be like totally fine with that. Because like glowing eyes is just like so intimidating that it's just like, damn.
Well, it's kind of going back to where she's like kind of like accepting her power a little bit more, and she's allowing it to show more and showing that she is death. She
Mm.
will, like, she's not afraid of you because she does have this power to back up her. She has the power to back up her words, and she can. We'll see later what she's able to do, but so I think that was just a very interesting scene that I think was important.
And then we also like seeing like Tamlin for the first time, like, he's been on the back burner. We've been hearing a lot about him, like, that the court is like going to shit and like he's not doing anything. And that's why they choose to meet on Spring Court territory, because it's like the neutral place now. And like Tamlin won't say shit. But then he finally actually comes up to her, and he would like, even she like Nessa, you see her getting so pissed off at Tamlin, and like understanding like this was the man who like literally the reason our life went to shit
Yeah.
after it already being in shit. And you
He's
see
the reason
how,
why she went into the cauldron.
right, and then how protective she was of Feyre. Like this was the man who abused my sister, who did this. And I think that's a very important moment for her to for us to kind of see, is how she views people who hurt her family and who hurt her.
Yeah.
And that, like, this is the first time like Tamlin speaks, you know, after, you know, that one scene in A Court of Frost and Starlight, right? And how he's mad at her, and like he is just like, oh, you're just as nasty as your sister said, and things like that. And that she basically makes Tamlin shrink away from her, because like she does that thing. She points her finger at him.
Yeah, and everybody knows, like, I'm that person. Like, if I start pointing my finger at you, you better watch out. Because I remember pointing, like, when I point my finger at you, shit's going to hell. And like, I remember pointing my finger at a guy, and I made him cry. And I was like, "You are the scum of the earth. Go back to where you like." I was like, "Go back to your little shithole of friends and leave my fucking friend alone. You ruined her. Like, go away." And I know I was wrong and like to intimidate him and stuff, but I remember like the finger pointing is such an intimidating thing because
It's
like
a thing. It's a thing. Like the finger point is like, don't fuck with me because I'm a
yeah,
fuck with you.
yeah,
And
it's a threat in its own.
oh yeah. And then even more so that when Nesta does it, because it's just like, you know what happened to the last person that I pointed to.
He died.
Yeah. So let's not pretend like you own shit right now. So back the fuck up, leave us alone. We're not doing this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she even like threatens Eris right before they take to the sky. And I love that was such a badass moment, because like it was just like, you know what? Mic drop, let's go. And then they leave, and she was like so proud of like how Cassian held himself in that meeting too, because like he kept his cool. He was jealous, and you could feel it from him, but you didn't see that in what he said. And even how Nesta held herself, and you can see how they balance each other out well against any threat. And I was just like, yes, this is my first time that I saw them actually kind of like
Working together.
yeah.
Yeah. This is the first time that they're like they're putting their selves aside and doing something for the both of them to better something. But yeah, I just thought that scene was needed to be mentioned because it was like we see these slight changes in Nesta, and that was a scene that you see a big change in her. And in Cassian as well, for being able to keep himself cool and being able to be that guy who lets somebody else shine. Because Cassian is cocky in his own right, he's cocky, but allowing Nesta to shine on her own, I think, is a big thing.
Yeah. Okay. So then next we have a training sequence, and the Valkyries finally start using swords or wooden swords.
Yeah.
And then we see how like the girls are training and everything, and then we see Gwen kind of like coming more into her own. And the fact that Cassian is like knowing that they're training as Valkyries already, and knowing that they're kind of like that's what they're aiming towards, and he's kind of encouraging them, but also kind of like telling them it's hard work. Are you going to keep working there?
Yeah.
Are you going to keep pushing? And like I like that he's giving them that check, that mental check of like, this is how far you have to go.
Are you willing to go that far?
Yeah. Are you willing to go that far? Are you willing to do this? And then the fact that like he ends up saying like, yeah, I know about the Valkyries. Like I fought against them in the war. And then like,
he fought with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So did I say against them? I mean,
yeah, you did. Well, one of them was his lover. He had
a lover that was a Valkyrie that
which I think is like a big circle moment that his mate is a Valkyrie too. Is training to be a Valkyrie. Oh, spoilers. We all know that they're mates.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get to that later
But
on this point
but
anyway.
they're denying it, but we all know it's true. But yeah, I
And
think that's a very
it is full circle because it's just like that's what he needed. Somebody, a warrior who can fight, who can stand up for
check
herself,
him.
who can check him, who can match his power. And the fact that that he knows about them, and it just kind of brings that more of like, I know what you need to do, and this is what we're going to get there. We're going to get you guys there. And I love that he does that. And then like when Gwen finds out that he fought with Valkyries. Why I keep saying against? He fought with Valkyries and he knew them. Gwen like lets out this like excited shrill, like we all know the sound of girls getting excited because we're very emotional, beautiful creatures when we get excited and singing. And Gwen is one of those girls, and I love that for her. I love that she's like that. She's like lighthearted and happy, and when she's happy she like lets it out. And I thought it was really cute. And then we get the first little hint that she lets out a high-pitched noise that was nothing but pure excitement. Azrael, on the other side of the ring with the rest of the priestesses, half turned at the sound, brows high. And then Cassian explains a little bit more of where he fought with them. And then Azrael turns back to his charges. But Nesta had a feeling the Shadows singer monitored every word, every gesture from his brother, right?
Yeah, that's why I think like we'll talk about Azrael's POV at the end, but that's why you could even see before his POV that he's interested and that he notices her and they notice each other because they always talking like Cassian and Nesta always notice that either Azrael will like watch her or Gwen will like look at him and then her face would go red.
Yeah. And even after, like, right, like, it says like, oh, that he was watching everything from his brother. And it could be like, we could be reading into it and be like, oh, well, he's watching his brother because that was like one of the almost love of his life at that point. And it was a very difficult time for him. Maybe that's why he's watching him. But then it also kind of be like, why did he turn around at Gwen's voice, And then he starts hearing what's going on after. We get, but this is why I am becoming more invested in them, in Gwen and Gwenriel for life. That's me. I honestly did not care about Azrael before this book. He was just there. He was cool. He was kind of snarky. He was kind of funny. Not in the way that Cassian's funny, because no one could be that funny, but he's funny and snarky and cool and just kind of on the back burner. I didn't really look at him twice, but this book is making me notice him more.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. And so we see that like they're starting to train and stuff and then it kind of goes to them talking about the solstice, the winter solstice, and Nesta and her love of dance. We see them talking about how she was when they were in the human world still, how she was like a killer dancer and like everybody would watch her when and that was like her weapon was dance. And I think that was very interesting, that whole scene where Elaine is talking about it and Elaine is the one who's like still
Telling
in
the
awe.
story.
Yeah, she's still kind of in awe for like about Nesta. And like she even says, so on page 467 when they're talking about Nesta and dancing, she goes, I always thought she was born on the wrong side of the wall, Elaine admitted. She made ballrooms into battlefields and plotted like any general, like you two, she said, nodding to Cassian, and then a bit more shyly to Azrael. And then Feyre even said, Nesta is a wolf who has been locked into a cage in a cage her whole life. And so I think that kind of goes to like everybody says that like Feyre was made for the Fey world, but Nesta was a little bit too. Like Nesta didn't feel welcomed in either place. She didn't feel like she had a place. What she said earlier in the book. And so I think this like reinforces that idea that kind of like found family thing where we see her starting to develop those relationships here with Gwen and Emery.
Yeah, and it's kind of like going back to the thing of like their family is really what makes them home. And the fact that like Nesta was too much for the human world. And her mom knew that. And, you know, we can go into the trauma that her mom kind of bestowed on her, training her and teaching her how to do things, how to hold herself, that she was to be this mom who pushed her daughter to fight and claw for everything and be this beautiful thing who was a weapon. And she was just not meant for the human world. I mean, like, yeah, we can say that Feyre was definitely not meant for the human world, because she didn't really have a foothold in the human world. But Nesta, she was just too big for the human world. Like Feyre, that would she found her place in the Fey world, but Nesta was her level went beyond what the human world could be capable of giving her, you know. And like we still have yet to see like how Elaine fits into the Fey world, but here in this book we see that like Nesta finds her place, her true place, in a place where like in the human world she wouldn't have been able to actually live, like fully live. She would have always been without. And I think like had her life been normal and had she just married off and been, she would have always had this feeling of like there was more and I didn't get there, you know? Um, and the whole ballroom thing, I do got to say this, like I love that each of the sisters kind of have their own thing separate, you know. Feyre has her painting, and look, everyone had this thing about like, you know, like it's just canon that that Feyre is not a good painter, right? That's their thing. But throughout this book, the way that not only Nesta talks about like Feyre's paintings, but also Cassian does, I think she might be a good painter. I don't think she might be like,
I don't think she's a realism painter where
yeah,
she paints like beautiful. Like there's different types of painting where it's more like the abstract, but you can still see what it is, kind of thing.
I think that that's what it is. I think she's more of an abstract painter. And because like often when people talk about her paintings, they're always saying like how it captures the feeling and how it captures like the essence of like that memory. So I think that that's what kind of painter she is. Me as a painter myself, I always think that I'm shitty, and I can kind of get that. But I also think it's funny because I'm just like, people probably look at her paintings and maybe not have an eye for that type, that style, and be like, dude, she's total shit. But also other people who get that style are just like, wow, that's like really good. So I just thought that was funny. But like Feyre has her painting, Nesta has her music and dance, and that's her thing. And you know that I'm reading Throne of Glass now, and Aelin has that affinity for music and dance. And I like it that all of SJM's main characters have that, have like, you know, that call for something else.
Yeah, like for Aelin, it's pianoforte. For Bryce, it's dance, and for Feyre, it's painting. And then those are like the three main Sarah J Maas women. And then we have like other things for like each of the side characters. They all have something that they like, that's their passion. They each have a passion, which I
Yeah,
think is very important.
I like that. And I like that because it kind of makes their the other characters a little more like they have their own life. We don't see their life. We don't get much of them because, you know, that's too much, you know, but I do like that they have something that calls to them. And I guess to me, because I'm artistically inclined, I guess, it just means more to me that they're actually having that passion and you can see it. But then it kind of goes into whatever you do, you know. You don't have to be an artist, you don't have to be a musician to feel what they feel. But I like it. I like that she incorporates that connection and that it's vital to who they are, because it makes more of what they are than who they actually are. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah. So moving on, we're gonna kind of go to when we see that Cassian has to tell Nesta about the dancing with Eris, and as they're it's after the training, I think. Or
Yes.
yeah.
We have Cassian asking the girls what would they name a blade.
Mhm.
And the girls are having fun with it, joking around and making things about it. But
Nesta's like, why are
Cassian,
you asking? Like,
yeah,
why? And she like is like, what are you asking? Why?
why? Yeah, and it's
Has to
just
tell her. And you're like, oh, this is the worst possible way to tell her. And I marked it as a dumb bitch moment too. I was like, oh, Cassian,
it
you're
was just like, Cassian, come on, sweetie. That's not how you do it. That's not how you ask her. That's not how you tell her.
yeah.
Dude, like, come on. Your girl is a smart bitch. You think that she's gonna fall for like, oh,
He
I just
wasn't
wanted to ask
subtle.
you so what? Come on, dude. And I think that has to go with like how he's a general. He's the commander. He knows how to handle people, and he knows how to see their weaknesses and see how they battle and their battle strategy and their mentality, right? And my thing about this is just like, we see a lot of like his point of view and how unsure he is of himself, and how that weighs on him consistently and constantly. He's always thinking about how he might not be good enough. And he even feels that more so when he's talking to Nesta, because he really is like vulnerable to her, and he really doesn't know what's the best way for him to do certain things, because she's not going to react like most people that he knows in his 500 years. And so like this way is like, so like, dude, you shouldn't have done that. And like us as readers, we're just like, dude, that was not the best way to do it. You should have just told her from the get-go. You should have done this. But it's also kind of like, it seems right that Cassian did that the way he did it, because it's just like, damn, my poor guy, he doesn't know how to talk to the girl he loves. And it's just like, fuck. And
And
it goes to shit.
yeah, it goes all to shit because he tells her like people voted for not to telling her, which I think was the worst part where he's like, yeah, like Amryn and Reese didn't want to tell you. And she's just like, what? And we see her getting angry that like Amryn of all people said
Yeah.
that they shouldn't tell her and didn't want to be honest with her. And that
That's
I
what
think hits
really got
hard.
her. Yeah. That's definitely what really got her, because
That's
it was Amryn.
it was
Reese, fine,
yeah,
Reese. But Amryn, what?
yeah.
That's what really got
And
her.
we see her storm off and we see her go all the way down the stairs. Like finally she was so angry that she made it all the way down those
And it's
10,000 flights.
funny. It's funny because like when I was reading this book and I was hearing like the first time that she went down the stairs and she had that first moment, I'm like, dude, she's gonna get like my first thought about the stairs, the first time ever, was like, she's gonna get to the bottom of the stairs. And when she finally does, when she finally gets down to the bottom, she's gonna turn around and go right back up. Or she's gonna be so pissed and just be so stubborn, she's gonna make it down there and not give a fuck. And both of those things happened, right?
Yeah.
First one, she went down pissed as hell, going down 10,000 steps. Like that's how angry she was. And when you're angry and you got to, go walk it off, go something, it fueled her even more that's the reason why she made it down.
Yeah. And like but I think like the stairs is like a metaphor for her journey. She was
Mhm.
bouncing back up. She was going up and down. Like her journey was not a straight path. Like she's up and down with like how she treated people and like she was good and then she was bad like and then something happened and it like it's a metaphor for how her journey was as those stairs as she would go down and she'd keep going and then she'd have to go right back up and restart and refresh. And I think that's a very valuable lesson that not every journey is a straight line. Like we see it with fitness, it's not like a straight line of losing weight. It's like it plateaus, you go back down, you go up. Like it's the stairs is a metaphor for life in the fact that not maybe I'm looking way too deep in these stairs, but like I think that even
Yeah.
if it was her intention or not, it's a metaphor that you have to sometimes you have to go back to the start and keep going and taking those steps and like pushing forward. And we see that Nesta finally does break free. And who does she go to? She goes straight to Amryn. She doesn't even like go to Feyre. She doesn't go to anybody but Amryn. And we see her coming in when Amryn is in the middle of having sex, but
Like
Nesta doesn't
right in the throes of it.
Nesta doesn't give a fuck. She's that angry. She doesn't even care. And Varian?
Varian.
He's like, oh my gosh, and like covers up. Yeah.
It's so funny to me because then, like, you know, they're getting up and they're throwing on clothes or whatever, and then they're yelling at each other, and like Amryn is just like, go, like, Varian, go. And then like he just like he doesn't want to. He wants to stay there to protect Amryn because he knows that Nesta's. I'm pretty sure Amryn has had pillow talk with Varian about her power and stuff like that. And so Varian knows what Nesta could be, what her power could amount to. And so he's just like, fuck, like this is it. And you know, he's a warrior himself, right? And he goes and runs off probably to get Feyre or Rhys.
Yeah, he goes to get Feyre and them, and
you know, and Amryn and Nesta kind of have this falling out. And like, okay, so like remind me that fallout that they had on the barge. That did we see that?
I don't remember if we did, but I know it was Nesta was like doing something that Amryn wanted to push Nesta, and Nesta didn't want to be pushed. And that's when they had the falling out. And then Amryn kind of did the shitty thing where she was like, we were never friends. And I think that hit Nesta really hard, where Amryn kind of said, like, I was never your friend. And Nesta viewed her as a friend. So like if Carly said to me, like, you're not my friend, and I would be like, then what was that? And like I
Well, you
think
were just but then
you're
it's also
using
kind of
me.
like but it's also kind of like Nesta viewed you as a friend, but then Amryn also viewed Nesta as never really truly opening up to her.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of like, well, you weren't my friend. You never really talked to me. You never listened to me. You never. But then Nesta's just like, but you were the only person who understood me.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like they both go at each other. They're both fighting at each other. And it's kind of like that girl fight moment where it's just like that betrayal that you felt is finally boiling to the surface and it's finally coming out. And then we have Feyre coming in, right?
And we have Nesta, we see Nesta reveal to Feyre that everybody was lying to her about her pregnancy and the fact that she could lose her life and her child's life in the pregnancy because she was not in her Illyrian. She's giving birth to a child with wings, and so her pelvis would not be able to push out the baby with wings because the wings are more sturdy than other fays with wings and stuff, and so it could kill her. And Rhys and everyone hid it from her. And Nesta is the only one. Yes, Nesta said it in
anger
and in the heat of the moment she says it, and we see immediately she regrets it, but Feyre isn't even mad at Nesta telling her. Feyre is mad that they hid it from her. And I think that's a very important thing to happen to Feyre is
yeah, because like it's this thing of like Feyre having their relationship, recent Feyre's relationship is kind of built on them being open with each other and them like not keeping things from each other. And when something comes in the way of that, shit goes off the wall. And Feyre, it becomes an understanding person. I think Feyre is like the most forgiving out of everybody in the inner circle.
Well, she forgives Nesta. She doesn't really blame Nesta for it. She blames Rhys. Like she like even says like, you all knew this. Like Rhys knew about the threat to our lives, and you see like Nesta be like, it broke something in Nesta, broke that rage, that soaring, seeing those tears begin to fall, the fear crumbling Feyre's smeared face. She had gone too far. She had owed gods. And then like even Amryn was like, you should talk to Rhys about this, not me. And like they kind of all point the blame to Rhys, and I guess yeah, he was the one who said they couldn't tell her, but they all should have been held accountable. And Feyre even tells like Cassian like she like take care of my sister and stuff, and like she knew Nesta would feel bad about this, but she didn't get mad at Nesta. And I think that's very important for Feyre as well. Is she probably like a year ago or so she would have been mad at Nesta, but she knows that it's not her sister. Her sister was the only one who was truly honest with her. And yes, the honesty came out of anger, but how far would it have gone if Nesta hadn't told her? How far?
And that kind of goes into like, you know, Reese's decision not to tell her, you know, and like
They
again,
treat her like she's a flower.
I'm gonna be devil's advocate here because that's who I am. I don't agree with this, but I see why he did it. I don't agree with it, and it happened. So I think his reasoning behind this was that we've talked about this during book club too. But like his reasoning behind this is just like he feels like Feyre deserves to be truly happy about something and truly excited because of all that they have suffered before, because of all they have both suffered. But then at the same time, it's just like Reese and Cassian has checked Reese often, like before ACOSF, about how strong Feyre is and how strong she could be and how willing she is to accept things happening. And she's constantly surprising Reese. But because he continuously chooses to keep all the cards to himself, he doesn't really give her the opportunity to decide. And that's the problem. That's what really people are like really pissed off about, because it's like it's her body and we have that, you know, that argument that mostly everybody talks about, like it's her body, she deserves to have the choice, she deserves to have like this knowledge to do with what she wills, because it's not just the baby's life, it's also her life, and then and therefore Reese's life as well.
And I think that was like one of my like tipping points for why I kind of don't like Reese anymore, is he has this like controlling, like Reese's character arc is not finished because he's still like, it's a shitty thing to do. Like, yes, you wanted Feyre to be happy, but you could have given them the time to help you figure out what to do, and maybe to help break the connection between the two of them or something. But the fact that he did it solely because he thinks that Feyre wouldn't be able to handle it really goes to show that he doesn't see the true value in Feyre being so strong and independent in her own right. And he is very controlling in that way. And we see versus where Cassian allows Nesta to fully be herself and allow her to bloom in her own way. Whereas, and like, yeah, Reese has done that before, where like he stands back and allows Feyre to do her own thing, but he still, when it comes to like everyday life, he still is controlling her in a sense. Like, I know you want a child, Reese. I know you have a breeding kink, and I know you want to have the best for your family and stuff, but is it really the best for Feyre when she has no idea what's going on with her own body? The fact that we even talked with Misty about this. Misty is in our group and she's pregnant right now, and she's like, if my husband didn't tell me something, I would be livid. And I can see where, like, with this idea of like, it's her choice. She should be able to make that decision on her own, and being able to come to understand what's happening to her own body with like, I would not be able to trust Reese if I was Feyre again. Like, I would think, is he constantly hiding something from me? And
Yeah.
it creates that, like, it's definitely going to have a negative impact on the relationship, like, because like, how can you truly trust anything he says if he's going to even lie about you having a baby, and what implications having a baby would be? Because
Yeah.
she's too far along now to like reverse, like, to go into the Illyrian form, because she can like manipulate her body, so she could have manipulated her pelvis early
Well,
on.
I think when they found out, it was already too late.
That's true too.
And so like it's just, it's kind of like, fuck, dude, like you could have done so much better and you should have done better. And I think had he told her very early on, had he been truly open with her, and you know, a lot of it has to do with him being scared so much that he didn't want anyone to see how scared he was. He only showed Azriel and Cassian how scared he was and how broken he was because of this, because they knew what it meant. And what it would mean for them as like being a father and being the one who ends up killing her because of what they are, you know? And it kind of it's just really sad to me for both of them because it's just like, fuck, like I get it, Reese, like you didn't want to hurt her, you were scared yourself, but it's also kind of that thing of just like you
There's
should have
another
told them.
person. There's another person in the relationship. Reese has this idea, the concept that like he is the one who has to take everything onto his shoulder, and I think that's what causes all of these problems. Is he's the one who takes everything onto his shoulder in this relationship when that's not how a relationship works. It is a two there's two partners in this, and I feel like he forgets that in this pregnancy it is Feyre is the one who is holding the child in her body. It is her body. It is not your, like, it just, it really bothered me that that's what he did. And
It was
I'm glad Sarah put this in because it kind of shows like how in real life how men think that they have control over what happens in a woman's body, and this idea of like pro-choice and like being able to choose what happens to your body and being able to have that knowledge of your own body, like being able to know what is happening, because I know doctors who won't allow women to do certain things with their bodies because a man has not approved it. And I think that's a very important issue within today's topic. And the fact that Sarah put it in this book, I think, is a lot. And it shows a lot that um the
like
idea
we know that Reese has all this love for Feyre, but then even
even it can be screwed a little. It's
he
not
can
perfect.
yeah, and like, you know, people don't like Reese already, and then finding out this, they absolutely hate him now. And it just goes to show, like, you know, though people love a character and love somebody for what they're doing, they they fuck up a lot and they still have room to grow. I mean, they're still fairly young,
Yeah.
but you know, it doesn't excuse the fact that he needed to do better and that people needed to hold him accountable for this choice that he took it upon himself to do. And you know, we see how it ends up fucking up everybody later on and ends up weighing down on Nesta, because when she found out, she immediately wanted to tell Feyre, you know, and she ended up having to keep it to herself because they decided. And that's her main problem with the inner circle, is that they always decide what's best, but what they do is never really what's actually
They
best,
have a
not
god
fully.
complex.
Yeah, it's just like this thing of like this, and the inner circle needs to realize that they what they decide is not always what's going to be best. It's not the best way to go about certain things, and that's the problem with, like, you know, them being on top of the world.
Yeah.
They got to realize, like, there's some shit that you cannot get away with and you cannot do. And you know, it's a fantasy world and all of these things, and the fact that we're able to call out like this is not okay is perfect, because you can see that that's not what you should strive for. This is not what you should be looking for. This is, you deserve better. You deserve communication. You deserve, with your friend group, you know,
Yeah.
with your significant partner, this is not okay. And the fact that you're able to call it out and see it as it is makes you, I don't want to say a
It's
better person,
important for
but
readers to read that though. I think a lot of people like say like, "Oh, this book has like there's like misogynistic characters in books and stuff." But like that's the whole point, is there needs to be somebody who goes against what the character wants, and there needs to be like, yeah, like I understand that like there was like somebody who like said that like calling Feyre like a fairy whore and stuff, but I'm like, but that's real life. That literally shows that there are people who will always view you and men who will always degrade you. And but it's about going against what they think and pushing yourself and thinking of yourself as better and being better than what who they are. And so I think we see this with Nesta, is we see her pushing back from the men in her life, and we see that when after she tells Feyre, she feels so guilty. She
yeah,
feels, and she doesn't feel guilty about telling, like being honest. She feels guilty because how it made Feyre feel, and she saw Feyre crying, and she immediately like was like fuck, and she ran. She
yeah,
ran.
because like that shows, like, you know, she hated Tamlin so much for what he did to her sister, and he hurt her and he broke her apart, and then in the same instance she did that with what she said.
Yeah, and then
she wasn't the one who caused it,
but she was
because of what it was,
pain.
but it was because of her, and that broke her more than anything else could. And then, you know, moving forward, we could spend forever on this one.
Yeah, so we see Cassian get Nesta because Farah tells her like take my sister because Reese is mad, which Reese had no right to be mad at Nesta. Yes, Nesta told her, but you weren't being honest with your own mate. It's on you, dude. And so we see Cassian take Nesta to the mountains. And I think this is also like an important thing is like Nesta being able to heal and doing hiking, which is something she hates. And she kind of tortures her own self when they're hiking and stuff. And we see this like her hating herself so much because of like and bringing back all those feelings because of what happened with Farah. But then we see her finally letting go of everything after at the very end when they make it to the lake, finally releasing all of that self-hatred and all of the pain that she feels for herself.
Yeah. And like, you know, Cassian was also mad at Nesta in that moment because he thought her
Selfish that she told her.
um
I think he thought that it was like selfish that she
and me, I don't think that it's because he thought of her selfish. I think that he held her to a standard where she wouldn't cross a certain line to hurt her sister. Like hurt her sister like that. He's seen the growth, he's seen how she's been changing, and he thought that she had risen herself above a certain standard. And then that was just like such a low blow. And even she acknowledged that it was such a low blow for herself. And so he was also kind of I think it's more that he was disappointed in her. Not that he was angry with her, but just disappointed in her. And not the fact that she told Feyre, like, because like I can't remember exactly. I think he also wanted to tell her.
Yeah, he wanted to tell Feyre.
And
Cassian is like the king of honesty in this book.
he's just like tell her.
Except when it comes to their relationship, he will not be honest with her then.
He won't.
I think I think Cassian also at the end of this realized how much guilt Nesta held. And even Nesta like saying it was on like page 516 is when she like tells him like he or no 516 is a 516 is a spicy scene.
But like I think I know where you're at. It's just like how he ends up telling her like all of these things, and they end up having this like one-on-one.
And we see her break down too. We see her break down crying in Cassian's
everything comes out. The
like,
whole thing about the fire with the logs, and like he ends up realizing like fuck, that's why she was always like this. And he ends up seeing all of these things and why she acted a certain way. And he's like, it all had a reason, it all had a point. And she's talking about this thing, and like this scene broke me so bad, because it's just like she's literally talking about how she doesn't want to be here anymore.
And she talks,
and
yeah,
like,
that hit me too close to home. Is like you feel so guilty in your life and you don't want to be here anymore. And I think that also hit Cassian hard too, is when he realized that she was done. She was at her last. She was literally, she didn't have any more straws in her basket. She was done. She was in so much pain that she wanted it to be over. And I think that scared Cassian, and everything. I think he began to understand her a little bit more and understand why she held this armor around herself. And she was this wolf who was caged, and the cage was closing in on her, and she couldn't. She had so much pressure on herself, and she was broken. She was broken.
She literally broke down about everything about herself, that she hated herself and hated that she did these things and hated that she acted the way that she did. And yet she acknowledged that she didn't know what else to do. And like Cassian ends up opening up about himself and about what he did to the people who hurt his mother, and how he ends up carrying that with him. And they end up, you know, opening up to each other about it. But then he also is just like, but I don't need to go into it too much. And then he ends up telling her like how you'll get through it, like that. And his whole speech, I gotta read it because it's too good. And I feel like it's going to be something that I end up coming back to a lot just because I need to hear it sometimes. Okay. I'm going to tell you that you will get through it, that you will face all of this, and that you will get through it. That these tears are good, Nesta. These tears mean that you care. I'm going to tell you that it is not too late, not for any of it. And I can't tell you when or how, but it will get better. What you feel, this guilt and pains and self loathing, you will get through it. But only if you are willing to fight, only if you are willing to face it and embrace it and walk through it to emerge on the other side of it. And maybe you will still feel that tinge of pain, but there is another side, a better side. She says, I don't know how we'll get there. I don't think I'm capable of it. And how often, how all of us felt that. You are. I've seen it. I've seen what you can do when you are willing to fight for the people you love. Why not apply that same bravery and loyalty to yourself? Don't say you don't deserve it. Everyone deserves happiness. The road isn't easy. It is long and hard and often traveled utterly blind, but you keep going because you know the destination will be worthwhile. And I gotta say, like, I'm tearing up right now, if you can hear it, if you can see me, but it's just like how often do you feel that? Like, you literally don't deserve it. I am such a shitty person. I'm so terrible to people. I hate people. I do these things and then I regret them later on, and you end up carrying that guilt with you. But then there's that other side of it. And like, this was like a huge moment for both of them, but then also for us, because it's just like, you have to hear this from somebody. You have to hear that from somebody who is not going to tell you it's fine, you'll be okay, and that's it. And then just stop there. But it's that person that tells you it's going to be okay, it's going to be hard, it's going to be fucking hard to do it.
Person who has gone through it too, and who has come out on the other side. Like, yes, Cassian still has a lot of stuff that he needs to deal with, and like, who doesn't? But he has been through what Nesta feels. He's felt that guilt. He's felt everything Nesta has felt. Maybe not to the extent that Nesta has felt, but that doesn't diminish his pain. And he feels for her. He empathizes with her. And having
Yeah.
having Cassian tell Nesta that and reassuring Nesta, I think, is very important for both of them. And this whole mountain, going to the mountains to heal, and Cassian even said, like, these mountains are for healing, that it's a special place, that it's oddly healing to be here, and to be at the lake is an oddly healing experience. And we see this with Nesta, and we see this with Cassian, and the healing that goes on over those days, and allowing Nesta to just be free of Valaris, and be free of the House of Wind, and be free of, like, everything, and just being able to let go, and
Yeah.
to let everything, like, kind of how we were talking about the wave, to let it soak in, but also just to release it, and release all of everything she had on her shoulders. And even telling Cassian she was able to release that.
And it's crazy because like, he also thinks like, yes, the dam broke, but he didn't expect it to come the way that it did. He thought that she would be raging and angry and rip apart the world when she finally decided to open up. And the fact that it came so differently than what he expected shows that how much pain she actually is going through, and how much that pain wrecked him as well. And that she had been suffering so much, and in everything that she had been living through, and he couldn't stand how much that she had let it eat her up.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he's just like, yeah, you're going to get through this, but you're not going to get through this alone, because I'm going to be here. I'm going to keep reminding you that it's worth it, that it's there. And you need that person to be there with you to tell you, okay, what's the next step? Okay, we're going to take one more. Okay, we're going to be doing this. You need that person next to you. And not so much that you become dependent on that person, to that person is tied to your healing, but it's also to like, that you're not alone, that you're going forward because of something else, because it's worth it, because the journey is going to pay off towards the end, and to show that you can stand on your own 2 feet, but that you don't have to. And how many times have we heard that in any book? You know, yes, I know that you can do it on your own, but you don't have to, because I'm here with you, you know? And, you know, going a little bit forward, they end up like closing off like this mountain healing scene with like him giving her another sword, and like her practicing and using that to focus her and using that to ground her. And
Her being able to focus all of her energy into this sword and into allowing release through the sword, and this to become something that she can go to, not as an escape, but something to use as a filter to filter everything and to hone in her feelings and stuff through the sword and the technique.
yeah, and it was honestly one of my favorite chapters to read.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was just really beautiful how they handled it. And it meant a lot to me. And so then we end up seeing that they end up coming back, and we're jump right into training with the girls.
Yeah.
And, you know,
we see Nesta really avoids everybody who knew what happened. She kind of like avoids Reese and avoids Feyre and stuff, she needed time.
yep. And we see the girls bring out the ribbon.
Yes.
And they start practicing on.
Oh, that's here? Oh yeah.
Yeah. And we see them starting to try it, and it becomes a lot more difficult than they thought. And Cassian is just like, okay, if you cut the ribbon, then you can hold your own, right? You can.
Yeah.
And so they like, this is an important like Valkyrie moment for them, not to the ribbon part, but the fact that Cassian's like, okay, if you cut the ribbon, you'll be able to hold your own and you'll be like a good warrior, right? So who's first? And this part, again, the three of them swapped glances. Nesta frowned. Whoever went first would get the brunt of the humiliation. Gwen shook her head. No way in hell. Emery's mouth popped open. Why me? What? Cassian asked, and Nesta realized they hadn't been speaking. So like that moment is just like they're looking at each other, and like how, like if you're like, you've had sisters, if you've had like a group of friends that you can have these communication, this conversation just by looking at each other. You guys give each other like looks, and like you have a whole conversation without speaking a word. And
it's common in Sarah J Maas's world to like have like looks, speaking through looks. And I think it's funny how like Nesta and Gwen are like, nope. and Emery's just like, oh, fuck me.
Yeah. And like Cassian is just standing there as these girls are looking at each other, not knowing what is going on. And I just thought that it was just like a cute moment, because like it shows how close bonded they are to each other, and like, you know, it strengthens their bond. And yeah, we always want somebody to be able to read our mind or everything, and Sarah J Maas always has like a little bit of a magical element, but this scene was just like purely based on like their friendship.
Yeah.
And it's so realistic to me. I'm like, yes, I want my friends to be like that. You gotta catch up on the lingo, Maggie. Gotta catch up on the eye lingo, okay?
So we kind of see that they like begin to like do this, and then we see that she has to scry again. She decides to scry again, and in this time she finds out where the harp is, right? We see she finds the harp.
Yeah. Before that, are we gonna talk about 16?
Oh, 516. Oh, 516 was. Is this the desk scene? I think 516 is the desk scene, right?
I don't know. I just saw quite a few things and I kind of stopped thinking about it.
So 516 is, yeah, 516 is the desk scene.
Okay.
I think 516.
They're training, right? And they're always giving each other heated glances, and whatever they said, like at the ribbon, like bringing out the ribbon or whatever, they both cannot, the heat is too much, and they just like get into the room, and he only made it as far as the desk, and she's bent over the desk, and they could just, and the things
They
this
go at it.
says, my gosh, hold on to the desk, my man. If you understand, like, this scene was just it, and it's that hot and passionate and like hard and just like, wow. And
It's kind of the like,
I need you right now.
yeah, it's that like that adrenaline rush that happens when you're so caught up in somebody that it's an adrenaline rush and you just need to feel their skin. You need to feel that connection with them. And I think this scene, what do you rate the spicy scene for this?
It's so short. It's only about 2 pages.
But it's still really, it's really good.
Oh my gosh. It's just wow. I want to say like a 7.5.
Yeah, I would say like a 7, 8.
Yeah, because it's like they're talking about it, and like, you know, let's pause for a second and talk about the word seed. Okay. I feel like we need to talk about this because there's been a lot of discussion out there about people being uncomfortable with the word seed, but I mean, you can't say
Yeah.
what the other thing is, because you know, I mean, you could, but you don't. You know, you got to remember, this is different. This is a fantasy world. They literally see it as that. That's what it is, because that's what it is. And I'm okay with that word. I'm fine with it. I don't see any problem with it.
I
I'd
don't see
rather.
a problem with it, but it does sometimes like make me feel like, oh.
And let's just say this is an adult novel, so we
It's an
see it,
adult novel.
and it's
So
kind of realistic that it's just not going anywhere. It's there because, like, you know, when people often think about like sex scenes, they're not thinking about like, okay, it goes in there, and let's say they finish in there, right?
what happens?
It
Yeah.
doesn't always stay in there. It kind of drips. It kind of leaks out a little bit. It kind of, it's a lot. And the fact that this one is very graphic with that, I'm just like, okay, I appreciate the
Yeah. So
visual.
it's time to move on to the next part. We're trying to spend like, I'm trying to cut Grace off at 5 minutes per point.
So moving forward, we have the harp, right?
Finally going to see the mark to get the
we-
heart.
Yes. And they end up going into the prison, and it's something. Oh, actually, you know what? Nesta also goes to the service, and it's the first time listening to music.
Yes, I think that was a very,
And that kind of goes back into like how she feels about music, and we kind of talked about that, how she is, but this is the first time she's listened to music that isn't at a tavern, that isn't like, you know, tied to her old ways, and it's kind of like that way of her opening up into more, into moving past what she was before. It was very beautiful. So then we have the prison scene, right? And it's because the music opened her up so much that she was calling to it, and she was
yeah.
opening herself up to the music of the service, the women of the priestesses singing, that she was trying to soak it in so much that she ended up scrying for the harp. And she always kind of saw that scrying was kind of like this dark and twisted thing that made her feel scared because of like the first time that it happened with Elaine, and you know, Elaine getting taken, and scrying became like this terrifying thing of like holding the stones in your hand and all of these things, and even the time that they actually did it for the mask. But this time it was easier because it was through something that she actually called for. She didn't force it. She didn't kind of fight against it. This was just natural and opening. And it kind of shows that like if she learned to understand that power a little bit more, how simple it would be for her to access that. Because like, you know, the walls, the stone of the cavern ended up becoming like the stones that she holds, and then the bones, the whole service became a scrying tool for her, and the harp ends up calling out to her again, and then we end up going to the prison, right?
Yeah,
And
her like taking like her also going to tell them that she like did it, and I think that was important, and I think the fact that Cassian went with her, and we're starting to see like they're kind of like a Sherlock Holmes and Watson kind of thing where they're both working together, and I really enjoy that they're working together and that he kind of lets her guide him. And we see that like they like hold hands while they're in the jail because he's like of all the creatures that are there, they want to stay connected and they don't want to both any of them to
yeah, it's kind of a cute thing that they do, the holding hands. It's sweet, it's cute. So then she starts seeing like what Amryn had to kind of endure while she was in the prison there, and she kind of feels bad, and she realizes like, fuck, I shouldn't have done that. And that's kind of something that Nesta is starting to realize, like she carries around the guilt, but then she's going to do something about it. She's no longer going to hold on to the guilt and let it eat at her. She's going to speak up about it. And I think she decides that Nesta saw her, I mean, Amryn saw her as something completely awful, even with the prison there. And that goes to show that it's not because of what she is, but it's the way that she's acting towards her. That's what makes her feel so horrible. And then we end up finding, like, Cassian has been telling her all of these stories of who he has battled, what things he has done, the whole telling of each other of what
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. And then Lanthis, we see Lanthis finally, and
well, we see when she gets like has to go to get the harp, and there's like this spells around the harp and stuff, and when she gets the harp, she hears singing, and she hears like these voices and stuff, and she tells the harp to like release the to break the wards and stuff, and in breaking the wards it breaks the cage for Lanthis to escape.
Because as she grabs the harp, she feels the thrum of the last note, but then she also gets a flash of Brialyn, and Brialyn is connected through the trove, through her.
They have a connection now, and sees that where Nesta is, and Nesta having the harp, and she sees that, and we see that they send somebody to get them. But we see then this fight with Leanthus as they're trying to leave, and Cassian telling her to run, and Cassian putting himself again in front of Nesta and in front of the end. In front of, that's our timer for 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes until we have to move on to the next point. But we see him finally putting himself in front of Nesta again, and willingly again to die for her, which happens so often with Cassian, that he's like, it shows how much he loves her and how much he wants to protect her, and he's like putting her above him and putting the harp above him, and this constant thing where constantly he's putting everybody above himself when the time comes. And it just shows the honor and the fact that he is that lord, and he deserves that title.
He really does, because it's not a thing of like, oh, I'm doing it just to self-sacrifice myself, but he's just like, I'm doing it because, I mean, it's a little bit of that, but it's also like that thing of like, I can do this because I can fight. I've been doing this for all of my life, and I'm going to go out swinging like that way. And there's a bigger picture other than me, you know? And Nesta doesn't want to go. She does not want to go. She doesn't want to go.
And when she finally does, she regrets it and goes immediately back, and she uses the harp to take her back to Cassian, and she sees that Cassian is her, and so we see that Leanthus kind of like goes into her mind, and we see Leanthus again with the meme. He's also into Nesta too, and he's like, you can be my queen and stuff, and he shows her a vision of them two together, and them two sleeping together and stuff. And she kind of like, you see her kind of teeter towards the edge, like, oh, maybe, but then she's like, no,
Yeah,
no.
because like he asked her like, which death god are you? He knows that she has such power, and then
Yeah.
like he
And he
even
wants to
asks, like,
control it.
yeah, and she realizes that, and she sees that. Then we have the blade, and she finally gave it a name, and she Iantha says that is not Narvin, and then asks what is the name of the blade, and then she says it's ataraxia, and he laughs at that. And you know, he tries to say like, what is she, what are
Like,
you,
what are you?
and then after like the whole like vision, she ends up finally getting out of it and just saying like, no, get back into your cell and shut the door, and that'll be it. And she knows that she threatens him, and Lanthus is very kind of like scared of
Yeah,
her.
but he doesn't want to go back in. And we see
Does
that
not go
she's
back
like, okay, you don't want to go back in? Well, here's how I'm going to handle you. And we see her yet again, decapitation, and she uses her sword. And the fact that it glows and he's scared.
in.
And the fact that Nesta has this power, I think it scares her a little bit too when she finds out what she can do with the sword, and the fact that she is able to kill him when
Yeah.
nobody else is able to kill him, and she decapitates him. And it's so funny that like, it's not funny, death is not funny, but it's funny that like, yet again, she has this thing with decapitation, really.
It's a thing about heads. I don't know, Nesta and heads, it's her thing. It's definitely her thing, right? We love
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah, and we see like Cassian is hurt, and she finally like, and we see that the Autumn Court, the leftover Autumn guards that are with Brayllian, come, and
and
she uses the harp.
yeah, they're like, we're not running out of here, and then uses the harp to get out, and they land in the river house
Yeah.
and the last thing she sees is Cassian collapse. And then we move on, and we have this thing of like and Nesta kind of like taking care of Nesta. I mean, Nesta's taking care of Cassian. And everyone kind of bickering over him and being like, no, you can't do this. No, you're not going to be able to walk. You need to rest. And him like, I'm fine. And it's just like, no, dude, you're not. Sit the fuck down.
Yeah.
And take this rest.
Yeah, we see it, it's kind of like Fair mirroring Feyre with Rhys and Akamath. We see them taking care of each other, and we see that this bond of like that, like being putting like allowing somebody to see you vulnerable and allowing somebody to take care of you while you're vulnerable is very key in a relationship.
It really
And
is.
in the same scene, we see that
Nesta and Feyre have that moment of forgiving.
They like, and like Nesta apologizes to Feyre, and Feyre's like, I'm not mad at you. You were the only one who was honest with me, so thank you. Yeah. And then we see Rhys kind of like back off of Nesta. And then we see him tell her to take the sword, and she is hesitant, and she says, I have no interest in more death. Even though she's literally death incarnate. She has the power of death, and she is like, I don't want that. I don't want that.
And that goes to show like her of like what kind of thing she is. Like, yeah, she's terrified of her power because she knows how bad
it can be used.
Yeah. And that's the thing that scares her the most, is that it can be used the same way that Lanthus wanted to use her. That was like one of her huge fears. She does not want to be used for this evil thing because of the power that she wields. So she doesn't want to have access to anything that will boost her power even more or wield her power into the weapon that it is. And it kind of takes that strength. And I think Azrael was kind of like shocked at this, but then also kind of like, I think he kind of understood that this was what she wanted, and he would back off. And we see them talking about like, you know, more plot points of like what Lanthus's plans were, and like what that vision that she showed, that was showed. And then we have like this fourth trove item popping up, but it's obscured in the vision. And so we have this thing about like them thinking, okay, now we have to go after this. Now we have to go after the crown, because things are starting to build up. Briallen is starting to come after them. And Then we have the solstice plan popping up, and Feyre does not like Eris at all, right? She thinks that he's a little asshole. She does not like him, and Cassian is relieved that Feyre also feels this way because Cassian does not like Eris. But then they're just like, you know what? This is the plan. We're gonna end up having this moment where Nesta is going to woo Eris.
Nesta is gonna entrap her in her thrall of who she is.
They kind of go over this back and forth, and then, you know, Cassian is just like, over my dead fucking body. And she's just like, wait, you want me to seduce him? He's just like,
yeah,
you want me to dance with him? And then Reese is just like, I just want you to seduce him, show him what, just play with him, toy with him a little bit. And she's just like, you really think this is gonna work? Like, Cassian's like, no, it's not gonna work, and nobody's listening to him at all, because it's like, we're not,
because everybody believes in her. I think it's interesting that like Nesta sees that people believe that she's able to do this, and I think that's also important, that like they're asking her to do something because they believe she can do it, and they haven't believed in her before. And yeah, it's like they're wanting her to just seduce him and stuff, but they believe that she is the one who is able to do this, that nobody else can do it, that she is the only one who has this power to do it. And I think that's important for Nesta to see. And I think that's important for the inner circle as well, to finally put faith in Nesta.
It's so funny because like everybody is just like, Cassian is raging, and like everybody's just like, she is just like, yeah, I'll do it. Okay.
Yeah, she's like, okay. She's like, fine. She has like the like conniving thing, like, yes, I get to. And then Cassian's just like,
oh, this is gonna be fun. And then like Cassian's like, no, what are you doing? What? Yeah. No, this is not gonna work. And it's just kind of funny.
And so
that's funny too.
Yeah. So we see them. So do you want to do the next point about the heart?
Oh, right. So we have Nesta kind of coming over to the house, right? And they're just, oh, I'm sorry, they go to the cabin first. Nesta ends up going back to the cabin of the house and kind of having this moment of being there. And this is Cassian's first time also seeing the cabin. And this is the cabin from ACOTAR, where Tamlin kind of ripped in. And they kind of like take in that moment to be there. And she kind of gets embarrassed that Cassian sees how they lived. And he's just like, I'm just a brute, remember, I've lived in far worse. And he kind of shows her like, this is more than what I had at most times. And
this does not define who you are.
Yeah, it's not everything that you could be. And he ends up telling her, like, you know, walk me through it. Tell me what your life was like. I think it was a very emotional moment for her to see that this was another point of like her being so angry with her father, but it was angry because she wanted to love him and wanted him to love her and choose her. And her sharing this whole moment of them being in the house meant a lot to him, and also to her, to show him this part of her. And the fact that she ends up telling him about like how her dad she used to get so angry at her dad because he used to sleep by the fire so that the girls could have the bed. And these little moments and these little things that her dad did that showed that, yeah, he cared about them in a small way that he did, irritated her so much because she wanted to be so angry with him. She wanted to hate.
Anger was better.
Yeah.
Anger was easier for her.
And he had to know how awful she was and but he never yelled at her. He never got mad at her. He named a ship after her and sailed it into battle. And yet she doesn't understand why. she doesn't know why. And Cassian's just like, well, love is complicated. And they just get like, she just has this moment of like realizing about her dad. And Cassian's just like, you won't understand until you're ready, and you'll know when that is. And they end up going on a quick flight somewhere else. And now we're getting ready for
The solstice. I think a month skips by, right?
a month
Months,
by.
like
It's
is
weird. This book has like you know, in ACOMAF and ACOTAR and ACOWAR, there is like very progressive of time passing. It's like a week, a day or two, right? But this one, month has passed. This is like almost a full year that is passing throughout this whole book, right?
yeah.
And it just kind of shows like there's a lot of in between stuff that's happening in that time, but then there's also more. So we see Nesta end up talking with Moore about the ball, and Moore ends up teaching her some of the dances. And I feel like this
And Moore
moment was
teaches Cassian as well. Cassian wants to
Ooh,
learn the dances.
that was
So
like the cutest thing ever, because I'm just like, if my man finds out that I love dancing and ends up learning how to dance just so he can dance with me, damn,
that's how you know he's really truly in love with her.
he's in love
And
with
we
her.
see that we see that they go to the solstice and stuff. They go to the Court of Nightmares to make an appearance there. And we see that Nesta dances with Eris, and Eris is enthralled by her dancing. Everybody watches her as she dances. She has this beautiful black gown. She looks like a queen, and she's dancing with Eris, and Eris is caught up in her.
Yeah,
Eris, she has snagged everybody's attention, and we see Cassian getting jealous.
yeah.
And
Because like he, you know, and like even when they came in, like Cassian's scent is all over Nesta, and Reese is like blocking this off. And you know, as a man, as a male, remember, because I have said this in our book club, the difference between a man and a male is just like, these are fae. They're
they have
not
animalistic
human.
tendencies.
Yeah, they are a bit animalistic, and you can't deny that piece of them without denying that they're fae. And so like this, his that like male satisfaction that he is all over her and she is all over him is something strong. And seeing her dance with him is kind of like, it's kind of getting on him. And poor guy, you know, he's trying to deal with it as best as he can. And like,
And he
and
eventually ends up stepping up and like cuts Eris off and is like, I'm gonna dance with her now. And
and
we even see him struggling through a little bit of the dancing, but he still does it because he was so jealous that he wants Nesta to dance with him, because Nesta, that's her passion, is dancing, and he wants to be a part of that.
he does. And then Nesta knows what he's doing, but then also knows that she plays it the best that she can. And like, okay, Eris, like, yeah, you had me for a little bit, but it's time to share. And she
Yeah.
ends up dancing with him, and she ends up talking with him, and she ends up smiling, truly smiling. And she's truly happy in this moment. And he like found himself lost in her. And they were just too happy, and she couldn't stop feeling that way. And
Until Azriel cuts in.
Azrael,
Azriel has to cut in because everybody, like, Azriel was like, I need to stop this before people like take note and stuff. So he has to like
yeah,
step in and dance with her.
I
And
also
even
like,
Cassian is mad at Azriel for doing that.
he kind of is, but like also like Azrael, I like Azrael and Nessa's friendship because like they know both how Cassian can be, and Azrael won't coddle her. Azrael doesn't cuddle anybody except for Elaine, which is another option, but you know, that's what it is. And like Nesta's coming alive during this ball and during this place, and like we even had their entrance coming in. It's just like Elaine looks like she was being swallowed up in the night court, right? And Nesta looked like she was finally alive right there.
Nesta owned that walk. Nesta
Yeah, she
owned it.
and Moore ends up talking with Cassian while Azrael's dancing with her about like, you know, everything that they're going through. And she it's just like, man, you just had to cut in, huh? You had to do that. And I love how they talk to each other. It's very funny to see how like their relationship has changed from what we thought it was. Like this is what we're actually seeing of how the relationship is. Feyre only saw like something there and then ran away with it to being romance. But here we're seeing what their relationship is actually like.
It's a sibling relationship. They
Yeah.
have a sibling. He views her as a sister and stuff. And so
And like I think even like Nesta saw that because like even when Morgan was teaching her how to dance, like she talked with her about like Eris and about things. And like, you know, it's always hinting to more going on with Eris. Like we don't know what happens, but you know, we'll find out sooner or later. And then Eris comes up to the dais and he's just like, all right, you've shown me what I can have. I'm intrigued. What do you want to return? And Feyre's into the mines and like they're just like, what are you talking about? And he's just like, I'll give you whatever you want in exchange for her for my bride. And this thing about Eris always just like picking his bride is funny to me because it's just like, damn, my boy, you can't do that.
that's how like good Nesta is that he literally was like, I'll do anything. I will do anything. And I think it's so funny because literally him, the Kelpie, and Lanthus were all like, we'll do anything to be with you. And Nesta's just like, no. And I think,
oh my gosh. And I like Eris is asking for her hand, right? And like Feyre is like, no, hell no. And even Cassian is just like, what the fuck? Like, no, this is not gonna happen. And then he ends up saying, it's a bonus, of course, that in doing so, it would be repaying Cassian for ruining my betrothal to Morgan. And it's just like, fuck, you little bitch. But I love Eris. I don't know. Something about him just makes me like hate him, but love him at the same time because he's the pot.
He's unabashedly, I don't think that's a word, but I'm gonna still say it, evil. And he likes, like, he doesn't deny the fact that he's a bad guy.
Oh my gosh. It's just I don't know. Something about Eris just makes me smile because it's just like, you little shit. You're just a little shit. And like, oh, I hate
He
you
likes
so much.
the mischief.
I like you because you nitpick and you're conniving, and it's just something about him that, like, you know, remember my theory about him. I'm hoping for the best for him. I'm hoping we get to see more of his like little things, but
so we see that they have
they end up leaving, and then we end up having the moment at the house. So they end up having their little solstice night at the house, and Nesta's there and she's unsure of where a year has brought her. And Cassian finally goes in and he's just like, come on, it's fine, like you're okay. And they go in, and I gotta say, like, point out this little quick moment. They take off their coats, and Cassian takes off his coat and he just drops it wherever, right? You know, ruggedly the guy he is. And Nesta kind of like frowns at that, picks up the jacket and puts it into the coat closet herself. When Kat and the rest of the family so used to the house just magically doing it, but she's different. She's been taught how to like do that. And I thought that was like a little moment. And so we have everybody sitting there and everybody sitting down, but then Elaine comes up to her and it's just like, oh, did Feyre pay you like last year? And she's like, no. And then Elaine goes like, please don't upset Feyre. It's her birthday after all. And in her state, she was like, oh, fuck you. And that moment, they just started laughing. And it kind of showed that like Nesta was not going to be tiptoeing around Elaine anymore. Elaine needed to like realize that this is not, I'm not going to be your babysitter anymore. I'm not going to be showing you how to like,
I'm not going to treat you like a flower.
Yeah. And I think that was like something that Elaine appreciated too.
Mm-hmm. Well, because everybody treats Elaine like a flower.
Everybody does. And so, yeah. So then we have them going throughout the
cake and gifts.
Fruit. Yeah. And we have Lucian there, and that creates some tension. And it's always something. And then he kind of hints at, like, you know, something going wrong between Jurian and Bassa, that they'll be at each other's throats like they like to be. And she wondered what it was about, but she couldn't figure it out, so she kind of let it go. And she kind of has this conversation with Lucian about like how training is, and like it's her favorite part of training, of learning to disembowel a man. And she's actually having conversations here. I'm a Steve. Sorry.
Bless you.
And more giving her gifts, and like she's also partaking in the conversation with Nesta. So we see that their relationship is starting to be a little more less hostile than what
Yeah,
it used to be.
we don't see the tension now anymore, and we see more of acceptance.
Yeah.
And we see that even like we see also the friendship between Nesta and Azriel when she like
Yeah.
goes to stand by him when he's like standing away from everybody. And I think that was important too, is like Nesta is
Yeah.
making friends with Azriel.
She goes up to talk with him, and then she listens to like how he talks, and then about the flames, about the fire. And he's just like, oh, my shadows don't like flames too much. But she'd seen Azrael before fire plenty, but she looked at who sat close to it and knew the answer. Why did you come if it torments you so much? Because Reese wants me here. It'd hurt him if I didn't come. Well, I don't. Well, I think holidays are stupid. I don't. And he says this beautiful thing that makes me like Azrael a lot more. He says they pull people together and bring them joy. They are a time to pause and reflect and gather, and those are never bad things. And she kind of like sees that there's pain in his eyes, but that there's always more to the story, but he won't tell her until it's time. And she kind of gives him that space. And so as like the gift giving starts happening and people start like laughing and all of these things, and she knows that Amryn ignores her and she ignores Amryn, and um no one gives her a gift again. And you know, it is what it is. And
But
as the gift,
she gives Az a gift.
she gives as a gift, and it was the cutest thing because um it was just very cute. And then Azrael ends up giving her a gift. And when she opens it, she sees what it is, and it's a little light that she can have when she
When to
reads.
read.
And she like looks up at him, and everybody is just like, what's gonna happen? And she goes up to hug him, and it was so cute. It was
cute, and it's cute, and it's both Cassian and Nesta's, both Cassian and Azriel's gifts to Nesta mean a lot to her. And I think you can see that the other people of the inner circle don't get her as much as Cassian and Azriel do. They don't put in the effort to know her, which I think is important. But we see that Cassian gives her a music box.
Yeah.
For Solstice.
And he is very tentative on giving her this box because we finally find out what was in the box last year. And what was in the box that was thrown into the Sidra, that was like a question that everybody had, everybody wondered. And it turns out that it was a book, one of the first ever books, because he knew how much she loved reading, and that he searched low and high for it. And I feel like that gift was something that he thought that she would like, and that it would mean something to her because she would appreciate it. And it's something different from him not knowing her and only knowing a little bit about her. But then throughout the year, you can see the difference between his gift last year and his gift this year is that like this year, he knows what actually calls to her, and that it is this little music box type of ball. And as the music starts playing, it's a symphonia, and she is so enamored with this and the kind of effort that he put into it, because not only did he have to get the symphonia and get the music playing, but then he also went back to record other music for it. And she just starts crying, and then he's just like, Nessa, it's okay. And she says, I can't accept this. And he's just like, but it was made for you. I won't accept it. Like, you have to return it. And he says, it's a gift, not a fucking wedding ring. And she's just like, no, I'll look to Eris for that. And they end up doing the dumb shit thing again. And they end up fighting over this thing because they're not talking about it. And then she's just like, I don't get you. I try to get a little close. I try to open with you. And you're just like, oh, it's better to marry Eris than it is to marry me. I'm not with you. I'm just fucking you. And they just start getting so mad at each other. And she says, I would marry Eris because he's a brute and he's terrible and he's a piece of shit. And I would marry him because she's just like him.
She talks about how she deserves somebody like Eris. And I think that hit Cassian, where he's like, it's not that she doesn't see that he deserves her, but she doesn't feel deserving of him.
And she ends up telling him, you're too good. You are too wonderful. Yeah. I don't deserve you. And it's literally rocks him to his core, because like that's not how he has seen anyone ever in his life. And she didn't deserve him before the war or after, and she certainly doesn't do it now. She shoves him away, and she's just like, I never deserved you. I never will. And he stands before her, and he tries to talk, and then he finally just like, you're not going to marry Eris. And they end up kissing, and there will be no one else for either of us ever. And they end up making love. And I gotta say, the difference between fucking and making love is so significant. This moment for them is like them actually opening up to each other and showing, and they have had so many heart-to-hearts up to this point that they're actually there in this moment. You see them starting to tie into each other. You see this light holding into each other, and it just means so much more.
And she asks him to stay. She finally asks him to stay.
And this moment, I don't, yes, it's a spicy moment, but it's really not. It's more of just like that finally like clicking into place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we have the morning, and
he leaves.
Wake up, and he immediately gets up, and I completely forgot about the snowball fights until this scene. And they run off, and then right before he's about to leave, he looks back at her, and then he looks at her, and he just wants to go back to him, and she feels her body calling back to him. And then he says, after the fight, I need to do a comprehensive expansion of the Illyrian legions. I'll be back in a few days. And then she just leaves. He doesn't even kiss her. He doesn't nothing. He just has to go.
And we see that he's gone for days.
Gone for like 3 days. And like the feeling that Nesta has at this is just like she is constantly being called to him. Like she feels it. Her body is calling to him, and she doesn't know why. We know why, but she doesn't know why. And to the point where she's just like going out of her mind, that she ends up calling the girls over for a sleepover. So they end up having a sleepover. The girls end up coming, and she's not sure if Gwen will come because she doesn't know if she'll leave the library, but then she finally does. And then Emery ends up coming too.
I think the scene of their sleepover and stuff, and them having the bubble bath and the house catering to them while they have like the sleepover, is like just such a true girly moment, and I love it. And it's the fact that they don't just have to like train together, they also have like the true sister friendship, and I think they're sisters in ways that Feyre and Elaine were never for her.
Yeah.
And we see that they make the charms, and that she enchants the charms, which we'll talk about later. But we see that she finally she's putting herself out there, and she's willing to like go outside of training to like be with them, and she wants to be with them, and she wants to interact with them.
Yeah.
And the bracelets are so cute.
The bracelets are adorable. They end up going, so then Cassian ends up coming back after like the slumber party, and like they're gonna do the ribbons cutting. They're gonna try again. And um Cassian is kind of keeping his distance, but then he comes and they're about to do this. Gwen is the first one up, and they have like their little jokes, and she tries. Um she says, I am the rock against the surf. I am the rock against which the surf crashes. Nothing can break me. And everyone kind of like felt this in that moment. That those words meant something. Nothing.
She keeps repeating this. It's a common thing that Gwen says throughout the book.
Yes.
Is this,
and it's so much into her character of like she's gonna keep
her past,
keep fighting. Yeah. And everybody stays still. Like nobody moves, nobody, and this moment means something. And
for each one of the girls.
And she strikes. And she cuts the ribbon. And then Nesta puts it on her forehead. And calls her Valkyrie. Mm-hmm. And then it became kind of a ritual for all of them to do it. Emery did it after her, and then Nesta did it after her. And then after this, Cassian is just like, okay, you guys cut the ribbon, but you guys have to do more. So you guys are going to be doing together. The three of you are going to fight as a unit. And she ends up like saying, you'll work into groups of 3. And then Gwen asks Azriel. She doesn't ask Cassie. She asks Azriel, like, what do we do? What do we get if we finish the course? And his shadows danced around him. Since there's no chance in hell any of you will finish this course, we didn't bother to get a prize. And Gwen lifts her head in challenge. We look forward to proving you wrong. And they try the obstacle course and they can't do it. They're just like, fuck.
But they continue to push themselves.
Oh, they do.
And you see that they change it every day, and you see that the girls still will push themselves.
I picture this course like, have you seen American Ninja Warrior?
Yes, that's what I was thinking too. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one. I was like, oh, this is like American Ninja Warrior type shit.
That's how I picture them fighting throughout this course. That's what I picture. American Ninja Warrior. If you guys haven't watched that show, I recommend meet
American Ninja Warrior.
American Ninja Warrior is like, it's insane. And that's literally how I picture them doing this. And, they're trying every day. It keeps getting harder. And nobody comes around except for Azriel and Cassian to watch them do it. But then Gwen finally reaches the line, and then she goes, well, and she only extends her hand. She extends her hand to Azriel. He says, you already have your prize. You just passed the blood right qualifier.
Yeah. This was such a big foreshadowing. Foreshadowing.
It was just everything. And then Cassian ends up telling her, like, I had a feeling that it would be today, because this was the first time that they look up in the stands and Devlin and a few other of the Illyrian warlords
men are there
watching them. And he's just like, you told the other priestesses not to come because nobody else was there, just the 3 of them.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, okay, like this is gonna be it. And I gotta say, like, Azriel and Gwen are having like more conversations with this thing, because like, we have that moment of like, before like them passing this, like Azriel, he's just like,
they taunt each other.
Yeah, Nessa ends up telling him like, oh, you have no idea what you just started. Remember how Gwen was with the ribbon? You're the new ribbon, Az. And I'm just like, yes, get him. But so then after the whole thing, because like Gwen shows how determined she is to overcome any obstacle, not just this obstacle that she did, but just like anything in life, she's willing to push past. She's the one who will continue going for it. And I feel like that's just cute in the way
it's Gwen. It's totally Gwen. To have that like ADHD energy. I think Gwen has like the ADHD energy.
She does.
She's like, that's how I imagine Gwen. Like I kind of imagine her to be like this kind of like semi-bubbly person, but like the ADHD where like kind of thing. But then we see like Cassian takes them to walk.
They have Starfall.
Yeah.
After this,
Yeah.
well, a little bit after this, they end up having Starfall. And well, right before Starfall, we have Nesta. She's like, there's one test that remains, and she ends up going down all of the steps, and she ends up going, kind of reliving through everything and how far she's come. And then she finally ends up getting to the bottom of the steps, and she looked at the city, lovely and bright and vibrant, but none of it seemed as vibrant as what waited above. The climb would be brutal and almost without end, but at the top, Cassian would be waiting, as he had waited for years now. And then she climbs back up. And then we go into Starfall. And
we see Amryn apologize, and they finally make up at Starfall. And then what happens after Starfall?
Talk about how she made the house. This is where we find out that the house was because of Nesta. Nesta needed a friend, and then we have the house. Which
she kind of enchanted the house a little bit more.
Yeah, she did. She
to have a personality.
And kind of formed it for good, because before the darkness was kind of bad and hard, but like with Nesta, it had a purpose. It had more of a life and more of like an understanding. And that we saw that when we saw the heart of the house, right? So we're moving fast forward. We're going
we have a lot to get through in the next hour.
Okay, so we have this thing where Eris is there in spring. It's springtime already.
It moves really fast.
In time, we're moving fast. And
because it takes them a while to get through the obstacle course. It takes them quite a while. They don't do it just within a day. It's weeks pass by. Eris
ends up telling Nesta about like the 3 mountains and how they are significant, and that there are 3 sister peaks, and it's the prison, the Ramiel, and the under the mountain, the one in the middle of the lands, right? And we see Eris kind of talking again, but then she also, is it here that Cassian kind of lets out that scent?
I think so. I think he does. And Eris can,
but it is what it is. But it's not like the meat scent, is it?
I think it's just that their scents were intertwined. Let me check.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it.
But here is where like Cassian is like being more of like the political conniving voice.
Yeah.
And like Nesta gets up proud at him, becomes proud, and then he's just like, he says like that one quote, like, I think I got the "I will slay my enemies, look down, don't hide."
Yeah, because they tell Eris that nothing was ever going to happen between her and him, and we see kind of Eris like be like kind of hit at Nesta and stuff, and Cassian's like, back the fuck off.
And they end up going for a walk, and they end up talking, and he's just like he ends up like going to go kiss her, and she says like, oh, people are watching. And this isn't like the usual like PDA type of thing. It's just like, he's just like, I don't care. I really don't care. Remember, he wears his heart on his sleeve. And he's just like, I don't care. I have nothing to hide with you. And I want them to know we share a bed. And then she says, does it undermine my image as a warrior to be with you? No. Does it undermine Feyre to be seen with Rhys? She says, no, it's different for them. Why? Because they're mates. And
Cassian's like,
what he'd say. And she was bracing for it. And here comes the fight. Oh, we're not. Because they're mates and you don't want us to be. And she's just like, mate is just a word. It doesn't mean anything. Like, it's just something. Like, for me, it's mostly been like husband and wife. I don't care about mate. Like, that's not what it is. And then he asks, like, why are you scared? Like, what is it to you? And then just he's just like, come on, just talk to me, just say it.
And
Like,
she's
I don't know
not,
what you're
yeah.
talking about. I'm not. And then they finally fucking say it. Ask me
Finally.
why I vanished for nearly a week after solstice, why I suddenly had to do an inspection right after the holidays. It's because I woke up the next morning and all I wanted to do was fuck you for a week straight. And I knew what that meant. What happened, even though you didn't. I didn't want to scare you. You weren't ready for the truth. Not yet. Say it. No, no, no.
She like refuses to say it. And even like Cassian like admits it. And she says like, and like she like admits that, she says, because that one word, the last scrap of my humanity goes away. And she says, with that one stupid word, I am no longer human in any way. I'm one of you. And she kind of talks about
saying that thing about well, I didn't have a choice.
yeah.
I don't know what I want. I didn't have a choice. And he's like, well, I didn't have a choice being shackled with you either. And then he's just like, fuck, that was not what I meant. But it's true, isn't it? And then they end up having this fight because like they both, their word choices are not well. They don't communicate very well at certain points.
And then she uses their bargain. She's so angry that she calls in the bargain that they made, that he had to respect one thing of her. He would do any one thing that she wanted, and she told him to stay at the House of Wind.
And or wait for a week. And I think that that's
Yeah.
kind of big because she knows that she cannot spend too much time without him. And like, it wasn't like forever. A week, just give me a week to kind of deal with it. And I think that that's a little more mature of her than how Feyre kind of handled it, because she knew that she wouldn't be able to avoid this forever. And that takes a big, huge step from her, because that was her thing before, of you avoiding.
And she also said, wait till I come to you. So she was admitting that she'll come back, but she just needed the time. And then we see that she goes to Emery.
She runs to Emery. And then soon after that, Moore ends up bringing Gwen. And I think that that's also like a cute thing, because it's just like, Cassian went to go tell Moore what happened, or whoever was at the house, and Moore went and got Gwen for Nesta because she knew that that's who she needed at that time.
Well, yeah. And then we see that
crying,
they're healing and stuff, and then we see as they're sleeping, somebody comes in to take them, and they're taken away at the dead of night. And the next morning, Cassian goes with Rhys to the house because he knows where she's at, and they walk in, and it smells like men, and there's blood, and
they are just
taken for the blood rite. Devlin and the warlords have taken them for the blood rite. And I think this was definitely foreshadowed throughout the whole book. It was foreshadowed.
But I mean, look at the dedication. Climb your own mountain. What mountain did she climb, right? Come on. Yeah. And so like we get her waking up in the blood rite, and she's like the first one to wake up. And I think it like she kind of mentions that how she's not Illyrian, so it kind of works differently for her. And
she's high fae. She has basically a better metabolism than most of them, that she's able to wake up before them. And I think we see her wake up, and she's like trying to get away from all these men, and then another guy wakes up, and she has a fight with him, and he wins. And she in their scuffle of rolling around, she impales him in the neck.
Oh my!
And then takes his clothes.
She's just like, this is it, this is what we're going for. And it's her first kill, and she kind of feared that before, like taking her first life with her own hands. She's felt like she's taken lives before because of her inaction, but this was her first time when she actually did it because she needed to survive. And we see her starting to struggle and starting to worry about the other two, and then that's when we realize the charms of the bracelets.
Yeah, she's looking for either of them, and she's trying to decide which way to go, and her bracelet starts to like glow, and that's when she knows. She like does like the directions and stuff, and then it gets brighter in one direction, so she goes to follow it, and she ends up finding Gwen, who is passed out on the side of the river, and she has to in order to get to the other side of the river, she strips down and gets Gwen all by herself. And
Emery.
She gets Emery. I was thinking Emery, but I said Gwen in my mind.
And Gwen, Emery, and that's why it was like beating more rapidly, because the bracelet knew that she needed help, and it ends up saving her, and they end up finding a place for the night, and they end up meeting another Illyrian candidate who ends up like saying like, look, you
Like,
either gotta go up into the sky, or you gotta go into the cave, right?
yeah.
And they end up going in there, and she's kind of on guard the whole night. And flashing back to Valaris, Cassian is losing his shit.
Yeah, and they're like
He's
trying
flipping.
to find out what to do. They want to go. Cassian wants to go, but Reese tells him and Az need to go get the crown from Braylon. And so him and Azrael travel to where Braylon is at, and they wait around for days to.
Days, and this is all happening while Ness is in the blood, right? And he
Yeah,
cannot think straight. But even Azrael's telling him, like, you know the laws. We've trained them well.
you know if she would be dead. You know, like Cassian knew that if she died, he would feel it. And so we see that like while they're waiting, Nesta gets Gwen, and then Gwen and Nesta are led to Gwen.
Emery,
Emery and Nesta, I caught myself there, are led to Gwen, and we see that Gwen is kind of doing fine. She's like, "Yep, I'm here."
fine. Gwen is just like, yep, I'm here. I
Gwen
was
is like,
looking
"Yep."
for you guys. I saw that.
She's
So
like,
then
"You
I
see
came
this
back.
glows?" I think that was really funny. She's like, "Do y'all know this glows?" I thought that was so
Did you
funny.
guys see that? That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Huh?
and I
It's
think
so
it's
funny. Gwen
she's kind of the
is
comedic
literally,
relief. She's the comedic
she is
relief of the group.
of the group. She's just like, she's a little fireheart. Like, I
Yeah,
know that that's alien things, but like she's like a little fireheart. Like, she's spunky, she's sparky, she's intense when needed to be, but she's bright, and the group needs that. They need that little bit of brightness. And Gwen is like so smart, because like she knew that Bellius was gonna try to lure Nesta in, and we find out that Bellius was the one whose family put the weapons in place,
yeah,
and they end up fighting them, but then also getting away.
yeah.
And
So they run to the mountain because they decided we're going to climb it. We are going to do this, and we see their journey. But Emery is hurt
mm,
during the scuffle, and so they have to travel with Emery being hurt. And we see that it takes them like a couple days, and we see that they're starting to lag behind and stuff. And they reach the arch where, um, and during while this is happening, while they're running away to get to the mountain, we
we
see that
see that
as
Cassian ends up seeing that Eris is there
is
with.
with Braylon, and they follow them. And then they finally go to like a lake area, and they're like, "Oh, what is this?" And then they realize, too late,
That
that Eris is under
um
Braylon's control. And then when,
Koshe was there.
yeah, he was there, and when he went to go, Azrael was able to get Eris out, but Cassian stayed because Braylon captured him
Used,
and
yeah. And
used the
that
crown.
part killed me.
I thought Cassian was gonna die. I thought Cassian was going to die. I was like,
I was
Cassian's gonna die.
so scared. I was so scared because people kept talking about like one of them is gonna die. And I was just like, if it's fucking Cassian, I'm gonna lose my shit. Because no, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. And he just found his mate. Like, he just let it click. And you're just gonna take him away. Do you know what kind of a spiral that will put Ness in? This is all running through my head. And of course, we don't see what happens to him, just that he's captured. And then we flash
Yeah,
back to where Nesta and Gwen, and they're making the trek up. And Nesta's using like the kind of training that Cassian kind of told her about, like the moss on the right side, or on the, I forgot what side it is. And they end up making their way up there, and they're running out of time. And they're just like, look, we're not going to make it. Let's just stop here. And they're just like, Gwen is like, no, no, we're going to
I'll
make
make it.
we're going to make it up there. We're going to become um shit.
We're going to go through, and we're going to do this. And then um we see that Emery is struggling, and Nesta, they make it to that point where Nesta tells them they're Emery's cousin is coming. They see the guys that are behind them catching up with them, and Nesta tells Gwen and Emery, "Go! Like I will
And
hold."
before this, let's talk
Oh,
about like how Gwen ends up telling her what actually happened.
oh yeah,
So this is like right where they decide like they're gonna make the final trek up. They're like, okay, we already became Aristian, but we can just wait here, wait a day, and that'll be it. And Gwen is just like, no, I'm tired of living in a library and just being there and just being safe. I don't want to do it anymore. I want to take the one. I want to travel the road less traveled with you two. I want to do it. And I want to do it without any restrictions or triumph over the rules to prove to everybody that we can make it. And they're just like, but like it's called the breaking for a reason. We haven't eaten in days. And then she ends up telling the story about how Hybern attacked, killed the
yeah. I think her story is very. It shows like the opposite side of versus what normal civilians had to go through with Hybern, and I think Gwen's point of view is very. It's telling to like what happens in war and what happens
yeah.
especially to women in war.
I cried a lot during this scene. I had to
Because
tell.
it's true. It happens.
It's just, I mean, she saved the children and then knew that it was going to happen to her.
Yeah.
Knew that her sister was going to die. And then they have her and they rape her. And then here comes in Azrael. And
Azrael Moore.
Azrael and more. And they basically save her from this, and he killed everybody in minutes, and he didn't even like hesitate. And she tried to get up, but then Azrael ends up carrying her. Reese ends up getting there too and helping out with everything. And he was the one who ended up giving her to Moore to take down to the library, and how she never talked about anybody, but then how Nesta came along and really opened her up and showed her more of what life could be. And it was like important for her. And then Emery ends up telling her story about how her father abused her, physically abused her,
And
hit
clipped her
her and
wings.
clipped her wings, and then it hurt her mother and killed her mother. And Nesta ends up telling everything because, like, remember, they don't really know what happened before, but
They
then
don't know
Nesta
what happened to each other. And then Nesta
and
tells about.
we hear everything about them, and then they just decide, like, we're gonna climb, not because we're gonna climb to become something no one has ever seen before. Not entirely Valkyrie, not entirely Illyrian can win the blood right. No, we win to prove to ourselves that it can be done. We win the whole damn thing. And they
I
decide to
think
climb.
I think that's very important that they decided for themselves. They
They
did it
decided
for
for themselves.
themselves, not for the men, not to. They did it to prove that they can do anything and that they are not just their trauma.
Yeah. And they make the climb, and it's as hard as, everybody has put it up to be, and to the point where like they have to hold Emery to climb, right?
Yeah.
And then they finally are just like, no, we have to rest. We can't do it. But then we have to go because like the men are catching up to us. They're right on our tail. They're right on our ass. We need to go. We're not going to make it climbing up, like carrying one. And so then Nessa ends up taking it upon herself, like, no, you're going to go up there. And Gwen
You're
is just
two are
like,
gonna
no,
make it, yeah.
we're not leaving you. We're not leaving you. And that's such a thing about Gwen, is like, she wants them to succeed together. And Nessa ends up knocking her out because she wanted to stay and fight. And people are just like, oh, well, she didn't actually make it up there on her own. Gwen is the reason why they decided to climb the mountain in the first place.
Yeah.
And I like that. I heard that theory, like people are saying like Gwen isn't a real bad. She didn't actually complete the blood right because she didn't actually climb up there on her own. She was carried up there. Literally, shut up, because she would have stayed to fight had it not been for Nesta. And
Nesta pushed them.
when Cassian, Azrael, and Reese finally made it to the top to touch the stone, they were all carrying each other, leaning on each other.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like internal, like the fact that they would put that down, that Gwen was hurt. She was hurt. She was not like not Gwen. It was who was hurt? It was Emery was hurt.
Yeah, Emery was hurt with her leg, and Emery ended up having to carry Gwen up there the rest of the way because she passed out. And Nesta ends up drawing the line,
which I think is symbolic that it happened years before.
Yes, with their with the Illyrian ancestor that did that. Can't remember his name. But then she ends up taking on Bellius, and we end up seeing this.
She takes up all the men.
She ends up taking them all out. And the badass that she is, fighting all of them. And I said, like, man,
without her magic.
Without her magic. I was waiting for, you know, we all wanted Feyre to end up having this badass moment of using her magic. And we're sad that she didn't get that. And we were hoping that Nesta would be different. And she ended up doing this moment. She took down all of them. And she finally stabbed a man in the balls. I saw that somewhere and I was just like, that is so true. She finally did it after 4.5 books. She finally did it. And she kicked everybody's ass, man. And
then we see that it was Brailian who was behind it, who put Nesta into the blood right and stuff.
And she was manipulating all of them.
And she brings Cassian to fight Nesta.
But like that one thing that she says to Bellius while they're fighting, she's just like, oh, you can't do it. You really think you can beat me hand-to-hand combat? And she's like, I do. And she says, because my mate taught me well. Beautiful moment. Oh my gosh. Like, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
It was the perfect thing to say in that moment. And I read it and I was like, I like hooted. I was like, yes. I was like, yes. But
and with her finally agreeing to that, she finally like accepts everything about it. And then finally she's knocked down, and then thunder cracks and the entire mountain shook with its impact, and blood sprayed. And Cassian was there and took him down.
Cassian killed.
Cassian
did the final blow.
And the fact that this was after the blood right ended, the time ended.
Yeah.
That Cassian was able to come in. And I was just like, yes, he came.
But,
and
he's under the control.
He's under control. And we see him fighting it.
We see him fighting it too, which I think was very important, where he
was so strong. He was being so strong, fighting against it, telling her, like, you have to take me out.
But Nesta didn't fight him. Nesta, that was an important thing. Nesta didn't fight him.
No. She's just like, no, this is not it. And then she wants to fight him, wants him to fight. And he's trying his best, but he can't. And then she doesn't have any magic, and she's trying to fight. She's had this whole conversation with Briellen, and Briellen is like spilling her guts about everything that's been going on and about the trove. And Cassian finally says, don't.
He breaks a little bit of the control.
He breaks a little bit out of it. And she ends up coming after Cassian, right? And she's just like, no, don't do that. If you kill him, then it'll be over. If you kill me, you won't get the trove and you'll never find it. And she tells Cassian, she says, kill Briellen. Briellen says, kill. And Cassian ends up taking the dagger and stabbing himself in the heart.
But
I literally shit I was just like, what the fuck? I was bawling. I was in tears because I'm like, you'd better not do it. Don't do it. And you know how I usually stop, but I was just like, no, I gotta keep reading. And then she finally kills Briellen, And we have Cassian there of how she was, and that the fact that Nesta actually unmade Brialyn, unmade her, not just kill her, unmade her,
like dust to dust.
gone. Like she literally flitted away, and even the dust, no particle was left of her. And then they finally says, "You're my mate," and they kiss, and there it is. And then more, and Azrael end up coming, and then they're just like, it's Feyre.
Feyre's giving birth.
And she's giving birth. And this scene was hard.
This scene was hard to read. It was hard for me.
Hard because like it was just like everything going through. And we're gonna kind of skip through it because we want to keep wraps on time.
We know that like the pregnancy was hard, and that like during her giving birth they were like, oh, we should do C-section, we should do this so that she doesn't have to push it out. And then we see finally that Feyre's almost dead, and Nesta gets all of she gets the crown, she gets the mask, she gets the harp, and she plucks the string of the harp to stop time.
And pleads to save her with her own magic.
She gives up some of her magic in order to heal Feyre, to heal the baby, and to heal her, to fix herself as well, so that she can have Cassian's babies.
The goddess even like she says, like the mother didn't let all of her power go. She let the part, I think it was mostly of the overpowered, because Nesta was overpowered. She took more than what she could handle. And so I think most of her, that extra power. That she probably couldn't handle anymore.
But we see that she heals Feyre.
And she heals the baby. And then Rhys goes down to his knees before her.
And thanks her.
And he, like, Rhys eats his words a lot. Because he's not used to surprising him, people being different. But these sisters have changed and shake what he usually thinks. And the fact that he is starting to see that about Nesta, that she's completely different, and that he needs to, I'm hoping to see him do better. I really am. And we see all of this, and Cassian is just
in awe
of her.
And she even tells Cassian that she fixed herself too, so that.
And that part was just like the cutest thing, because it's just like, are you ready to? And she's just like, I mean, not now, but like
no. But later down the line, yes. And then we see that Rhys gives the house to Nesta.
Oh yeah, she gives the House of Wind to Nesta and Cassian, because it's hers. It's her thing. And we see everything kind of being wrapped up together. And then they have them talking about the mating ceremony.
We don't get to see it because Sarah said it was too cheesy.
And Sarah said something about this, about like, her trying to write it, but that it just felt so corny. And I can see that as a writer being like, you can't write a scene like that where it's so happy and so, because it does feel corny. But it's
because Sarah does like happy endings. She says she likes to have a happy ending.
And I guess that's why I'll always love her books, because they're always going to be happy endings. And I need that in my life. Like I was watching Zack Snyder's Justice League yesterday with my brother. And like,
I'm not done with it. I'm like an hour in.
Towards the end, I'm just like, I told my brother I can't finish watching this because I don't know if it's going to be a happy ending or not. And he's just like, what's wrong with you? It's fine. You're going to be okay. And I'm just like, no, I need to be happy ending. So literally after I finish that, I'm going to tell you how it ends, whether it ends good or bad. But I also needed an extra boost of serotonin. So then I went to go watch She's the Man to like boost myself up. So that's why I love Sarah J Maas's books, because they're always happy endings. Like actually happy, like happy, not happy with dread, but happy. And the fact that they're gonna have this and that they're both gonna finally like accept that they are worthy, both of them, it's just so cute.
And so now we get a look. Spoilers for the extra POVs. I kind of don't really care about the face and POV. It was okay.
It was just kind of like a little, like, for the people who wanted their point of view again.
Yeah, but
But
Asriel's POV.
Let's talk about that one.
Let's give us 15 minutes to talk about this, because then we need to do broader subjects of Sarah J Maas. So Asriel's POV, we see that in Asriel's POV, it's after the solstice dinner. That's what it is. It's the solstice dinner where he is at the house and Elaine is there and everybody is there and he is still up, and then Elaine comes to give him his gift. And she gives him cotton earbuds because she knew that Nesta and Cassian were banging all night. And she's like, you might want to have these. And it's funny. She does give funny gifts. Like, she gives funny gifts. But then we see that he gives her a necklace and she asks him to put it on her. And so she does the thing where she, like, turns around and, like, puts her hair up for him to, like, put it around her neck, and he, like, touches her and stuff, and you see all of his emotions and everything he feels for her. And he kind of, it's more of like a lust over her, I feel like, than an actual, like, love he feels. He just wants to be with her sexually, and I don't think he understands that yet. And we see that he goes in, they both go in to kiss each other, and I'm giving just a short recap of it and then we can talk about it. And then Rhys stops him and is like, Asriel, you need to come to my office now, kind of like a principal kind of thing. And we see Rhys interrupt, and he tells Asriel that he cannot do that when Lucien is in the house, and that he has to respect Lucien and the fact that her mate is here and he cannot interfere. And Asriel gets all defensive and is like, but I deserve to be with Elaine. Like, you and Cassian have the other two sisters. Why can't I have the one? And then we see Rhys tell him, like, no, and you need to leave. And he goes to the House of Wind, and he goes to the top, and he sees Gwen there. And Gwen is still training, and so he gives her a couple tips and stuff. And we see that his shadows like to, like, it's cold out and his shadows dance in
the fog of her hair.
Yeah, Gwen's breath and stuff. And then we see as he leaves, he hears singing. And the thing is, Gwen likes to sing. So I think that's also an allusion to them being together. But that's just a quick recap of what happens.
And then it ends with him going down to the library and giving the necklace to Elaine to Gwen. And Clotho is just like, oh, I'll tell her that you gave it to her. And he's just like, no, don't tell her that I did. Just and she's like, okay, I'll say that a friend did it. And I think Clotho is kind of shipping them too.
Yeah, oh no. But so let's talk about Elaine and Asriel. This is why I don't want them together, because Elaine literally, like, refuses to talk to Lucien, refuses to tell Lucien anything, and she's literally stringing this male along, and, like, Lucien is hurting because of this. Obviously, like, his mate doesn't talk to him, she doesn't tell him anything, and then she goes ahead and tries to get with Asriel.
Fuck Elaine, man.
Fuck Elaine.
I'm sorry to those of you guys who I did not hate Elaine in any of the books. I just saw her. I
didn't hate her either.
I felt for her, but this point of view
made I hated her.
Hate her like so much.
Yes, Asriel was being a little bitch when he's like, I deserve to be with her, like, but that also comes from his place of, like, feeling like an outsider all the time, and the fact that, like, his two brothers have both sisters, so why shouldn't he? And he's wrong in that sense that Elaine doesn't belong to him. Yeah. But it's also, I think, the fact, and, like, he shouldn't have tried to kiss her, but we also have to hold Elaine to the same standards as we do. To kiss her.
And you kind of put me in check on this, because, like, as soon as I finished the point of view, I immediately took to Snapchat and started messaging you, because I was so pissed off at Asriel for doing this. Like, why is he doing this? What's wrong with him? No, he has to think clearly. But you're right, it's not his fault. It's Elaine too. She's initiating these things when she has her own problems that she's got to deal with. She's trying to avoid doing it with Lucien, and she's trying to go on with Asriel, who, like you said, lusts after her, and who she sees like that. But I feel like part of her trying to deny Lucien is trying to deny what she is, like the same way that Nesta was trying to.
She wants to keep onto her humanity.
Yeah, but it's at the same time, it's just like, that's not being human, honey. That's not, no. Deal with your situation. You need to own up to what you're doing. And
And
she's
it was
doing
right. It
to
was
just,
right of Yeah, and I think it was right of Reese to step in because I
yes.
think he doesn't want anything to happen between Lucian and Asriel because Lucian would have every right. And he's trying to protect Asriel. Like, yes, it might seem he's trying to protect Lane, but he's truly trying to protect Asriel from
And I feel
making
like
a mistake.
part of him knows that Elaine doesn't really see Azrael as much more than just that instant pleasure and that escape.
Yeah.
And him as like a lot of people got pissed off at Reese for talking to Azrael like this, but it's just like you need somebody to check you when
To
you're
keep
about
you
to
in
make a
check.
mistake.
Yeah, and I think
You want that friend that's gonna tell you don't go around fucking with this girl who's not really gonna be anything for you. Like she has a whole man right there and she's ignoring him, and you think that she's just gonna change her ways after
for
fucking
you.
you? Like, no, that's not how it is. Like, think, buddy, you need to think. And on top of that, we bring in like the political side of it. It's just like they are royals. Like, you cannot get mad at them for thinking about the bigger picture or how things will have consequences.
Reese is trying to protect his court, trying to protect Asriel. And I think, and we see like Asriel get mad at it and he goes away, but then guess who takes him out of being mad?
Mm-hmm.
Gwen. And I think the scene with Gwen really shows a lot because I think we need to focus on his shadows, where with Nesta and Elaine, his shadows always recoiled. And people think that's a good thing that his shadows recoiled from them and stuff, but
And I don't think that it is because
they're
like
a part of him.
yeah, and you saw that like we don't really see how his shadows speak to him in any of the other books, but in this point of view, you see them how they're trying to take care of him, how they protect him, how they care for him, and like they tell
And how
him
they
like
like
best,
Gwen.
sleep. They
They
like
go
her.
towards her and they interact with her. And I think that's very important that we see that Gwen kind of like she doesn't shine light into his darkness. She accepts like she brings that
Embraces it.
embraces it. Yeah. And I don't think she knows that yet, but I
And
think this is a sign that they are mates.
she took him out of like his gloom and like his
Yeah.
anger so easily without
She
even
was able to reroute it and she had no idea she was.
she had no idea she was doing it, but she did it anyways. And the fact that his shadows did not tell him that Gwen was there because they didn't see, they saw that that was a better place for him to go than for him
Yeah.
to be alone. And they accept her and they want her, they call to her. And
Yeah.
if I know people are just like, oh, that's not enough to go on for them to ship each other, for like for that to be a whole ship, but it's just like I think that this is a relationship that will be better beneficial in healing for Azrael, because Azrael has a lot of baggage, a lot of shit that he has to deal with, a lot of stuff that he doesn't tell to anybody. And
Yeah.
Gwen, her thing is overcoming those obstacles, overcoming those traumas, and moving forward and fighting forward and demanding more of life. And Azrael, I don't think he has been living his life to the fullest that he can. And I feel like Gwen will bring that balance to him. It's kind of like that thing of like you want to find that partner that's going to end up balancing you out, not to fix you completely, but to show you what else is out there. Like Cassian and Nesta, they showed each other that they were both deserving, that life is so much better when you go out and actually live it. And I feel like that's what's going to happen between Azrael and Gwen. Whereas Elaine, I don't see her balancing out the darkness in Azrael. She has a darkness in her too that she hasn't dealt with. And I feel like if Elaine and Azrael end up getting together, they're both going to end up denying that, and it's going to end up fucking them up. Whereas Gwen embraces it and moves forward. And it's that wave, ideologically, the thought comes, the thought goes away, and there it goes, drifting on. Like you embrace it and then let it pass through you. And I feel like Gwen is more capable of showing Azrael that there's more and that there's better than than Elaine ever could. Oh, I can hear you.
Sorry, my roommate was doing stuff, so I muted myself. So kind of with this let's recap the book and kind of the broader things that this book talked about. So this book is a mental health book. This book is not it's not a very plot driven book. It is more about it's a character building. It is it is a true Nesta book where it is her dealing with her trauma and overcoming all of her issues and being able to be free and truly love and be loved and accept herself and be accepted by others. So kind of with that, one of the things I'm kind of bringing in something that a follower of ours wanted us to talk about was the fact that we know that Sarah J Maas is complicated in the sense that she has done things that are very they're not interesting, they're just wrong. Using Breonna Taylor to promote her book, and we see a lack of diversity in the book. How do you feel? Because I cannot speak on it because I am not a POC, but how do you feel about the diversity in this book as a woman of color?
Well, I think, how do I explain this in a way that people understand what I'm trying to say? We like, if you guys know me how I am, maybe from the rest of this episode, you can hear that I am very understanding, and I usually see both sides of the stone, of the coin, or I can peer into the mirror and see the other side, right? I'm very open in how I can empathize with people on what their traumas have been, because I myself has dealt with a lot of shit. And when it comes to the POC rep in books, I remember what it was like growing up and wanting to be seen and not having that opportunity, and kind of looking at TV and movies and not being able to see like, oh, I'm just like her, you know? And it was hard. And you grow up with it, and to the point where it's just like, okay, well, what we see on the media isn't what represents real life. Even though you wish that it did. And, you know, now we're in an age where things are changing in the media, and where we're being able to see more different types of body types. We're seeing different types of people. And I think that's beautiful. Now, when it comes to this book and this series, I understand that the world is a fantasy world, you know, that thing that people say. But I also understand that there is room to bring me in as in my color. There's room to have me there and it not be all about me being Hispanic or me being whatever I am, you know? And I feel like a lot of fantasy books don't do that well, of just having a person of color and just having them be, because we're more than our color. We're more than the way that we speak. We're not just our traditional garb. We're not just our accents. And I feel like people, when they put that forward, that argument about like, oh, well, this is how you should represent a person of color, with their traditional garb, with the way that they speak and all of these things. And it's just like, I wear the same clothes as you, Maggie. I don't wear my Flocorico dress like every fucking
We have matching
day.
t-shirts.
We have matching t-shirts. I don't, my English is perfectly fine. I may not know what I'm talking about most of the time, but you would, if you were listening to me, those of you guys who listen to me on the podcast, if you did not see my face, would you be able to tell that I'm Hispanic? Probably not. And so like that's why I don't really like that argument of just like saying like, oh, you have to put in the like the tilt of their accent in this. It's just like, no, fuck that. You can put me in there without me having to have anything else, a defining feature that ties me into becoming a person of color. And that being said, with that argument, there are more people of color in ACOTAR than people want to say. There are whole courts that are people of color. The summer court, they're all dark brown, black, even. I would go to say I wouldn't say black, but really dark skin. And the dawn court, they're all brown. We haven't seen those courts. We haven't gone into them. We haven't had too much interaction with them. We had only the high lords, and that's it. And then we have Helion. His court is a bunch of mix of different colors. Lucian is mixed. Reese is mixed. The Illyrians are not white. They are people of color. And for people to go around and saying that they're not people of color is also kind of like taken away from people who are in that in between, who are not white, but who aren't brown or dark enough to be a person of color. And you are harming the people who are that in between. And yes, you could say that she can do better, because literally everyone can do better. And Sarah J Maas still has a lot to work on. This book was written 2 years ago. It has not been where this conversation has been going on for like this past year, where it was really, really talked about. And I feel like the world is opening up, so we have opportunity to see different types of people, like she did with Throne of Glass, right? We have the whole one series that she opened up into another continent. And you kind of have to realize that not every place in the world is exactly how you live. Like I live in Los Angeles, right? We're very mixed. We have so many different cultures around. We have so many different people around. And it's not going to be the same if I go out to the Midwest. It's going to be mostly white, and I'm hardly going to see anybody from my color. So I have to realize, and that's in the same country. That's in the same country, okay? So we have to realize that not every place that you live in is going to be exactly representative of like a fully diverse people. You have other books where they're very diverse, or they have people who are from different continents or different places, different lands, and you clearly see that they're different. They're people of color. They're a different whole other nation. And I feel like a lot of people jump on it to just get angry, just to be angry. And it's just like, fuck, dude, like yes, we need to do better. Everyone needs to do better. But then at the same time, it's just like, don't turn a blind eye to where something's there, but you just don't look at it because you don't want to see it. And I feel like people need to understand that is a conversation that needs to be had more openly, and that people need to be a little more accepting of us who are in between, who are not brown enough, who are not white enough, and to see that it's not always a black and white rep or no rep. It's a very blurred line. It's a line drawn in the sand that it shifts with everybody passing over it to and fro. And I feel like she did a little bit better in this book compared to the other ones. Again, we're not completely out of the night court. We're not completely into other worlds. I don't think that was a huge pillar in this book, the POC rep.
This book was mental health, right?
Yeah, that's its main staple.
And essay.
And sexual assault. Yeah, for sure. Because this is, we also have to realize, like, yeah, you want every book to have rep, but then you also want it to have diverse rep, which means not just people of color. You want it to have disability rep. You want it to have mental health rep. You want it to have mid to plus size body rep. You want it to have different types of representation. And for people to say that only LGBTQ plus and only people of color plus is the only rep that deserves to be spoken about is really harmful to those of us who don't only fit into those boxes. We are more than just that one thing that defines us. We are more than just how we look, how we speak, how we walk and talk. that's very the surface level of who we are. We have passions, we have dreams, we have things that we want to fight for and things that we believe in, but you're not listening to that besides listening to only look at the color of our skin. And that's not okay, because then that you're doing exactly what other people did when they saw the color of our skin and they deemed us not worthy of anything.
Yeah.
So that goes in to check yourself. Like, are you willing to look past just who I look like? Are you willing to listen to me and actually care about what I'm saying? Or are you just interested in just looking and saying that I have a voice now only because I'm a person of color? And I'm gonna stop there because that was a lot.
I mean, that was very well spoken.
Yeah,
I think especially when it comes to like the diverse range that POC is. It's not just, oh, you have to be you have to meet a certain like darkness of your skin color to be
yeah.
a person of color.
And with that, because that reminds me, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead. All you.
That reminds me of like this thing that people were saying about the Illyrians not being people of color. And because that Reese was not a person of color because he was very pale, or he got pale under the mountain. Let me tell you something. I am Hispanic, right? I am half Mexican and half Nicaragüense. Nicaragua is near El Salvador, if you know where that is on a map. If you don't, look it up. And in Mexico, we have a wide variety of how dark or how light you can be. And the same in Nicaragua, we're on the darker side. Now, if I spend all my time inside and I do not go out, I get very, very pale. Very, very pale.
Yeah,
Like,
we had
you
this
can
discussion
see-
with We Hunt the Flame.
yeah, like
with
you can still
Zafira.
see a little bit of like how that I'm not white. But then when I'm out in the sun, when I'm out every day and I'm swimming and I'm doing all of those things, there was one point that my hair is super dark. My hair is super dark to the point where it's almost black. There was one point where I was so dark, so brown, you could not see my eyebrows. Picture that. I want you to picture it because it's very funny. I
don't know if I can picture that.
I want you to pull that up. You see how dark my eyebrows are, right? I was so dark, you could not see my eyebrows. It looked like I had no eyebrows.
Because I'm so used to, because I met you, September? So I haven't seen you throughout the summer.
You
before.
haven't seen me dark. You haven't seen me dark. And even that summer, I was not dark because I was inside. We were quarantined.
Yeah.
You have not seen me fully, my full, beautiful, beautiful brown that I get. Nobody has on TikTok. And so it just goes to show, like, you know, so there are a lot of us people of color who are one color in the winter and one color in the summer. Okay. We are a range. We change. We're like chameleons. Okay. We know how to adapt. And I just think it's funny that people don't, it's mostly white people who say like, you can't do that. Or it's really dark. Black, indigenous people of color on the darker scale who say like, oh, you don't get that pale, where it's just like, but us in the middle, we do. And so you can't say that that's not true unless you actually know that that is not true 100%. And when is that ever the case? Never.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Beautifully spoken.
thank you. I just
Yeah.
had to
I think I wanted you to address that without the input of me, because I feel like I can't speak on that because I will never experience that. Like I experience other things in different ways. Like when it comes to like being the daughter of an immigrant and stuff, I've experienced phobia and stuff. But looking at me, you wouldn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't know that. And I think, especially when it comes to like POC who are lighter, and they have this idea that like you're white passing kind of thing, and like you even talked about this before. I think we talked about this in our book club, how like there is this kind of stigma against POC who are lighter, and that darker POC don't I don't know how I'm going to say this. You're the one who put it way better than I did. But we've
Like
had this conversation before.
yeah, and I think I kind of said it, like how like they don't want to acknowledge that their experiences can be different from darker. Like every person of color, their experiences is never going to be the same. Like yeah, we're all people of color, but people of color is a broad umbrella term. Like it's huge. It goes from anybody to everyone. Everyone can be a person of color. Like even if you're white, you're not fully white, you know? I mean, if we want to go into that deep discussion, but nobody really wants to think about it that way. Nobody wants to be like, okay, well then you're saying that the white are oppressed when they're not really oppressed. And I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there is a huge broad version of a person of color that is so huge that you can't really wrap your mind around who is a person of color and who isn't, and which experiences are valid to the person of color cause or which aren't. Like Malia, she's indigenous and nobody thinks about her that way, and nobody sees her that way, to the point where she has to literally state it every single time.
Like I remember, I don't know if we want to share her story, but she was talking about how like people thought she was something else, and she was
Yeah,
like, no.
this is what I am.
And
And so many people go through that. So many people are just like, oh, are you this? Are you that? Are you that? And I'm just like, no. To the point where there was one time that someone came up to me in the middle of the street while I was walking, and they were asking if I was Hawaiian or if I was Polynesian.
mhm, yeah,
And like, no, I'm not. And if you look at me, you probably would be like, no, you don't look that way. And but then at the time I did. So it's a loose term. And you know, when we say Black, Indigenous, person of color, you're differentiating between Black and you're differentiating between Indigenous, but then you're throwing people of color, everybody else who does not fit into Black or Indigenous, under one broad term. And that's not fair. That's why I say people of color, because it's all people of color, not just singling out the Blacks, singling out the Indigenous, and then everybody else thrown into a big old washer machine where everything gets mixed together. That's not fair. And if we're all about us being fair and equal, then you have to realize that some of our language is very harmful to other people who you think you're speaking for when you're really not. And again, I could be speaking on somebody who as another person of color does not see the same way that I do, does not see this way of thinking, who has very strict ideology of how people of color should be treated. And the way that I think is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and the way that you think, Maggie, is not going to be everybody's too. So it's just like, if you're willing to make everybody have a voice, and if you're willing to make everybody's voices known and understood and accepted, then you have to understand that there's going to be people out there who are not going to accept your ideas and who are not going to think the same way that you do. But it's your job to understand that and to be okay with it. Let the wave come, feel it, let it go, and move forward. You can let it change you, you can let it shape you, or you can just take what is knowledgeable from that thought process and then change your own thoughts and move forward. We're ever evolving. Our viewpoint is never going to be the same. And I feel like people need to understand this, is that why we have these discussions about books, why we talk about these things, is because we're always changing on what we view. Like the books that we used to read 10 years before have so much shit going on in them, so much problems going on in them, that now as adults we can talk about it.
you
Whereas
can
back then,
recognize it. The fact that if you choose to, what really is important is that you as a reader choose to recognize the problems that are in a book. And like there's a difference between like a problem that create like for the plot problem versus like an actual problem with like a theme, like with Rainbow Rowell and I think it's Fangirl, no, Eleanor and Park. That is inherently like there's a common theme throughout the whole book
yeah,
of like the racism in the book. and the fetishization of Asians. And even now we see that problem today with the over fetishization of Asian women and what has happened in the last week because of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's recognizing that there is an inherent problem and that it's not. I think recognizing the problem is like the first step that needs to happen for every single person, especially when it comes to reading and like those overall themes that an author continues to portray in a book.
And like we can talk about how, like, you know, Sarah J Maas could have had so much more POC rep in this book, but then you also have to realize that this book wasn't too much. Like, this is not an excuse.
There was not many new people.
There's not that many new people. We have people who we have met already, and that was the point of the story, was not to open up the world so much more, because we don't leave the night court. We are still there, you know. Whereas with Feyre's books, we were opened up to a little bit of the new world, but not that much. And so I'm hoping that as the series goes on, because we have more books coming, that we're gonna get more of how the rest of the world works outside of the inner circle and outside the court, you know, because there's more out there in this series that most people haven't seen. And that's not saying like, oh, you know, we're waiting to see if she changes. We're waiting to see if she listens to us. Yes, we are. And if Sarah J Maas had thrown in like 5 new people of color in this book just to throw them in there, people would have been pissed. People would have been pissed because, oh, she just did that just to do it. And it's just like,
but you asked her to.
Yeah. But then it's kind of like, no, it's kind of like that mentality with girls. Like, we want men to get us flowers, but we don't want to tell them that we want flowers, because then if we tell them, you're just doing it just because you told you, not doing it because you genuinely want to. And it's kind of that same mentality of like, you want an author to listen to you, but then you don't want them to do it just because you asked them to.
Yeah. And like, hopefully with Crescent City, I mean, like with Crescent City,
we got more.
You get more because like the Viper Queen is Asian-ish. Hunt is not white, I'm pretty sure. Neither is I forgot his name. Isaiah. Isaiah is black. Therian. I don't think he's white either.
And then her 2 friends.
Yeah.
Her 2 friends
Fury is Asian.
Yeah.
And who's the dancer?
Her name. I don't remember her name. But
Jasmine, something like that. Something with a J.
Something. She's a person of color and she has fawn feet.
Yeah.
So you got to remember that. But yeah, and I just think that Sarah J Maas is what her key points are in her storylines. It's always the mental health. That is her selling point.
That's her niche, is writing about that. And so, and especially I think you need to, if you want more rep, you have to have more rep in the publishing world.
Go to ask for books by people of color authors. Ask for own voices books. Ask for that. But you wouldn't want it from somebody, you wouldn't want a white author telling the story of a person of color.
So this is one book that has that people have brought up is with own voices. Dana Swift, she wrote a book, Cast in Firelight, and it's an Asian POC rep, and she wrote it. It was considered an own, like they considered it an own voices when she's really white, but her children are half South Asian, and she wrote it for her children. And so Maya Reeds did a really good thing on this, and it's like, she's not a person of color, but she's doing own voices, and I think, yes, it's great that she wrote a POC And people are like congratulating her for that and stuff, and it's like,
It's
why
just
does she need to be congratulated for doing that? Why shouldn't it be a normal thing? But I think what are your final thoughts? What's your overall thoughts of the book?
Overall thoughts of the book, it's definitely one of my favorites. It not only because like this is the Nessian is what I have been waiting for, but it spoke to me in a lot of places where it said a lot of things that I have told other people, but I haven't listened to myself.
It hit home.
It
Hit
really
you.
did.
I related to this book so much that it scared me, and I was like, and you kind of feel validated through this book and your experiences, because you're like somebody else, because Sarah puts her own
A lot of
thoughts.
own things, like even the training as the Valkyries, a lot of it had to do with her training on her own.
Like
And
she trained with a guy, and he taught her like how to
yeah,
do
he taught
stuff.
her how to wield the sword and everything, and a lot of it is like real world actual things that Nesta went through, she did. And it's tying from a lot of other people's experiences as well. It's not just Sarah J Maas, but it's kind of that overwhelming sense of like, you needed to hear this, you needed to hear that
You're not
you
alone.
know that what you're doing is not okay, and how you hurt people and how you treat other people, but it's because you need to feel this way. You need to end up having someone check you and someone tell you like, this is not okay, you need to do better, and have someone to hold you accountable. And I feel like I'm definitely going to be rereading certain scenes from this book when I need to hear these words, when I need to hear somebody tell me that it's okay. And
Don't break down, because I'm gonna break down and I have to keep my makeup on.
sorry,
But I
like,
know what you're trying to say. It's very it's it's a fulfilling book in the sense that you feel validated for your experiences, and you feel like this book you can come back to reassure yourself of
yeah,
things, and to reassure yourself that you're not alone, and that you can get through it, and
yeah,
that there might not be, the tunnel might be long, the tunnel might be short, but it is worth it to make it to the end.
yeah. And this may not be a book that calls out to everybody. There might be another book that deals with this sort of mental health in another way, in a better way maybe, but this book meant something to me. And
And
for anybody out there who's trying to tell me, oh, you're this type of person because you like this book and because it's your favorite, fuck you guys, because you don't know me, you don't get to tell me
yeah,
what.
I think a lot of people quick to judge based on what books are your favorite, and they don't ask you, why is that book your favorite? Like, what about a book do you relate to? Because like people love Harry Potter, but who
Mm,
nobody loves the author. But a lot of people love Harry Potter, and a lot of people still enjoy the movies and stuff, when
mm,
there are things that are wrong in Harry Potter.
mm,
And so you can't be quick to judge people.
because what's meant something to someone else is not going to mean the same way to you.
Yeah, like with me, Air of Fire means a lot to me, that book.
Mhm.
I have my Rowan's wife shirt. Um, but
Yeah.
I this book really hit home for me, and it really resonated with me, where I felt kind of like called out from it,
I did.
where you're like, shit, I do this too. And then you're like, Nesta, stop being a dumb bitch. But then you're like, oh, I
Oh,
do that exact same thing.
I do that too. Yeah, I've done a lot of things that she does, and it kind of made me be like, "Fuck, you're the same." But not everybody's gonna think that way. People are gonna still hate Nesta and still hate the storyline, and that's fine. You can do that, but that's why there's so many other books out there. You can always choose to read another one. Um,
Yes.
so overall rating, what did you give this book?
I think I gave this book a 4.5 stars, because I reserved 5 stars for my one day reads, and I could not read this book in a day. I had to sit with
That's
it.
too much. We couldn't even film the podcast in one episode, so I don't think we.
Well, like you know me, like I can do 800 pages in a day, but with me, with this book and what it meant to me, I really had to sit with some
Can
parts.
process
Like
it.
like how you usually sit and process, I had to do that. And I think this is the first book this year where I actually had to do that, where I had to sit and process what was going on.
Yeah, yeah. I gave it a 5 because it called out to me. It really reflected a lot of like what I liked. And then, of course, it was a book that I thoroughly enjoyed, and it's a book that I had been waiting for, and it didn't let me down. It gave me the family moments that I love, the found family trope, and it gave me that sense of friendship and bonding, and it called to different parts of me that I enjoyed. So it had a lot of it. Not to mention, like, yeah, we love the smut and the spicy and the sex and the tension and everything. And that was amazing too. That's also why I gave it a 5 star, because it was pretty great. But it's everything that is interwoven together. It had all the emotional aspects with the as long as the physical, and like the recalling into your own strength. And I feel like a lot of us women need to understand that and remember that. And this book, I felt like, did that for me, not for you guys, but for me.
Yes. So I think this is a wrap up of the whole
Yeah.
book. This has gone for 3 hours. Well, we've been
Sorry,
on for
we're
about
so
3.5 hours. But we really wanted to get through this book and to talk everything that we wanted to talk about. So
Yeah.
thank you if you have listened to every single part. Thank you. Oh, quick mention: the name of her sword being Inner Peace that hit me the hardest. The fact that her sword means inner peace, the fact that she is like full circle finally being able to be happy, her having peace in herself, that broke me. That is what broke me, was that when I saw that, I started bawling my eyes out. And I hadn't cried the whole book, but that is the point that broke me, where I was like, I started crying, and like Carly was like, are you okay? And I was like, no, it means inner peace. And she was like, okay. But so this is our full spoilered episodes.
18 plus.
18 plus, like, I mean, like 16 plus, because I'm sorry, 16-year-olds are definitely having sex. I'm sorry. But
Yeah,
I really did enjoy this book, and I enjoyed talking about it too.
I did too. I mean, there's still a bunch more that we can say and talk about this book. We could honestly talk about this book for months, honestly, because there's so much to unpack with all the tension around this book, and about how people's views on this book, on the author, on the story itself. It's a lot to unpack. And I do want to put this out there because I don't think we've mentioned it in any of our other episodes. You have no right to tell someone that they are a bad person, that they should kill themselves because they buy a book that they are excited about. You are then becoming the person that you hate by doing this. You become the person that calls out and hurts other people based on what they do, based on what they like, based on who they are. You are becoming the people who you fear in you trying to become this woke person. And I don't want anyone ever to feel ashamed or feel like they have to hide what books that they buy, what books that they are excited to read. This is an experience for all of us to take on different levels. And for you to say that someone should not buy a book or should not continue living or walking this earth because they buy a
book.
story that you don't like is not okay. And I could talk on that a whole bunch, but I just want to make sure that people, our listeners, understand that we do not stand for that. We are not okay with that. I want you to be excited for books that you buy. I want you to be excited to read any book that you pick up. And
you can read a book and recognize the problems in a book.
mm-hmm.
There's the line between recognizing problems and then like saying that there are no problems with the book. Those are two different things. But just to end it here, that's how we feel. Grace, eloquently done, as always. So thank you so much for listening. If you have made it to the end of this 3-hour episode, you get a sneak peek at our next guest. Kind of to put it on a lighter note, we're gonna have Eamon. I'm so excited for this. I've been waiting for her to come on. Eamon is Eamon's Books on TikTok. She's very popular. I literally like followed her, and then 2 days later, Melissa, we all had like a conversation, like a FaceTime.
Yeah.
We had like a Zoom call, and I was freaking out because I was like, oh my gosh, like I had just followed her and I was like liking all of her content and stuff because I had found her. And then like I was talking with her and we've become friends, and I'm like, oh, this is great. So I'm excited to talk with her.
We're gonna get a lot of insight on like her journey and like what she's been up to and kind of like how she got
what she has planned.
So if you guys have any questions for her, make sure you guys check out our Instagram story because we're gonna have a poll up. Keep an eye out for any TikTok videos that we post about the next couple episodes, so that way you guys can always answer questions, because we love hearing from you guys. We like hearing what kind of things do you guys want to listen to and what things you guys want us to discuss, because
yeah, we love getting feedback from you, you posting it on our stories and stuff. We love that. Also, quick note, we will be gone next. So Eamon's comes out Friday. This is out on Sunday. So Eamon's comes out Friday. The next Friday we will be off because we did do basically 6 hours of content, over 6 hours of content for this one book. We decided to take a break for a week.
Yes, we need to take a break because we deserve it. We have Maggie has school. I am moving. We have a lot to unpack on our own lives. So we will be taking a 1-week hiatus, but we will be back very, very soon. We just need a mental health break.
Yeah, it's just a much needed break. I have finals and stuff that I need to get done. Not finals, midterms and stuff. So I really need to focus on that. So, but thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you in Eamon's episode, and we hope you enjoyed our three-part episodes for this book, and we'll see you in the next one.
Guys.
Listen for the bloopers right after this. So we'll see ya. Bye. 3, 2, 1. Hey guys, welcome back to episode 17 of our podcast, a very bookish podcast. Today is going to be our A Court of Silver Flames part 2 talk. Or no, this is we're starting over. That's going at the end of the episode.
Take 2. Take 2.
Okay. Intro, take 2. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Hey guys, welcome back to a very bookish podcast. We are doing no.
Take 3.
Take 3.
Say it first. Right now, say it. And then
welcome back. Today is episode 17. We are talking about A Court of Silver Flames. This is our part 3 episode in our 3-part series for this book. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm. Okay, ready?
Here we go.
3, 2, 1.